I'm so scared right now.
This is Joker's trick.
We live in a society.
Or you're just going to be beatboxing for the next 3 hours.
I believe that's how Hans Zimmer recorded the entire soundtrack.
I think so. He just did that into the mic.
He played a few tracks of Jamie Foxx rapping, and Nolan was like, no, not this time. Use that on another one.
Dark night, he lied to me. He hates me.
He hates me.
The Batman.
What is happening?
This is a podcast where we're taking a look at all the cinematic Joker films, both official and unofficial. My name is Joke.
My name is Batman. Where's Rachel?
And I am a car chasing dogs. Wouldn't know what to do if I caught one. Introduce a little anarchy, chaos, society, etc., etc.
Does the Heath Ledger Joker ever actually say society in this movie? Like, is the word ever spoken?
No, he does not.
He doesn't have to.
No, it's the play it again, Sam, of our the 2000s, really.
He evokes society.
Yeah, no, he's all about society, yet he never says the words. That has just become a thing because that is what The Dark Knight is about, because that's what we're talking about today. The Dark Knight.
Guys, I have to say, I'm glad that we're finally shedding a light on smaller indie
I was gonna say,
art house movie.
an obscure movie.
I know, I'm glad too. Yeah, I mean, after the Batman, everybody just forgot about this movie. It just relegated to the cinematic doldrums, you know?
Well, because, it wasn't grounded, yet comic booky, like the Batman. It didn't have serious themes on its mind while still having a sense of humor.
This movie, Gotham just looks like a city, like a normal.
Yeah.
What the hell? Where's the city that looks darker? That's what we want.
In the rain.
Bruce Wayne is silly here. What if he was just stunted?
So yeah, it's good that we're shedding some light on this movie because few people have seen it, but the few that have don't seem to like it very much. It doesn't have a good reputation, but we quite like it. So
yeah, it's got some messy performances.
It's not great. It's not great.
Guys, I'm gonna be honest. I get why we reviewed Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. Why are we reviewing The Dark Knight on a Joker podcast? What possible impact could it have had on the cinematic Joker?
Yeah, this is the most forgotten Joker for sure.
I thought my jokes were bad.
You know what they say? Do we really look like we're guys with a plan?
We're a podcast. We don't look like anything.
We look like cartoons.
We look like
the
cartoons.
We're a podcast chasing the YouTube algorithm. We wouldn't know what to do if we caught it.
if we had a video go over 5K views, I just wouldn't talk to any of you again.
All right, so let's jump right into it. Let's talk about the behind the scenes of this movie, but we're going to be brief because we all know about like what has happened like behind the scenes of this movie. But
so
it
Darren
all starts...
Aronofsky had Bruce Wayne be a homeless person in one
Yes,
grab.
that happened, but we got to go back even further to a little movie called Batman and Robin.
Oh, Batman and Robin. Was that the sequel to the Batman we watched just 2 weeks ago? How has that franchise fared while we were watching the animated version?
Well, yes and no, it's a sequel. It was at the time, but now people are trying to say it's in a different universe.
Shut up!
Because,
that was never how it worked, you morons! You absolute fools!
I agree. So, Batman and Robin came and went. It didn't bomb necessarily, but it was very disappointing. It was embarrassing. I still like it, though.
I love it.
It's mediocre, but I would watch it more than many other films.
I literally just watched it a few weeks ago. I had a great time.
Fun fact, originally the plan to make a sequel to Batman and Robin involved Scarecrow and Harley Quinn as the bad guys.
Yes.
And Harley Quinn was going to be the Joker's daughter.
And Jack Nicholson was going to come back. He's going to be like 85.
Yeah, the Scarecrow was going to make Batman take fear gas, and he was going to fight all the villains, culminating in the George Clooney Batman fighting the Jack Nicholson Joker at the end of the movie.
Yeah, wasn't it also kind of an adaptation of the trial episode of Batman the Animated Series?
Well, kind of, because he was going to have to face all his villains and, like, reconnect with his Joel Schumacher was all about reconnecting Batman with his inner bat.
Right, which he kind of forgot about in Batman and Robin. But we love Batman and Robin, despite it being. I do. It's very funny. So that didn't necessarily kill comic book movies, as a lot of people are led to believe, because they still were around and they were still influenced by the original Tim Burton Batman. But Batman was at least cinematically dead. And they were trying to figure out what to do. Like Troy said, Darren Aronofsky was going to do Year One at some point.
They were going to do Batman v Superman, where they're both like divorced and they have to fight Joker clones made by Lex Luthor.
That would have been cool. So the development of a Batman movie was kind of just up in the air. They wanted to do Batman Beyond. They wanted to do Batman Year One. They wanted to do Batman Unchained, which is the Joel Schumacher sequel.
They wanted to do Batman on the toilet. They wanted to do Batman in a car.
No, that was Bruce Timm's idea for Batman Beyond. Was Bruce Wayne in a car.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
I need to see Quentin Tarantino's Batman Unchained with rap music in the antebellum South. That would be sick.
So everybody had a take, and then this little man with beautiful blonde hair.
Yeah, beautiful blonde hair, 3 movies under his belt. One of them a no-budget movie, one of them a smaller budget movie, but a huge, like underground hit.
Yes.
Memento.
And a live action remake called Insomnia.
Oh, yes. I remember the original animated version of Insomnia.
Did you know Robin Williams was in both the animated and the American live action remake version of Insomnia?
The greatest anime ever made.
He was also in Flubber.
He was also, Nolan also made Following, which has a Batman symbol in it. Foreshadowing? Mayhaps.
Maybe.
Yes. Well, Memento comes out and everyone thinks that this guy is a genius. Cut to 20 years later, he makes Tenet and we discover he's an idiot savant.
Well, from a certain point of view, I mean, I love Tenet.
That puts you about on par with Spielberg and Tarantino.
It's called an artist, Jan.
It's called a movie director.
He swings and he misses. It's okay. And sometimes the misses are beautiful.
But after Memento, Nolan was hot and hungry to make a big budget movie, so he teamed up with an even bigger genius. That's right. The director of Blade Trinity himself, David S. Goyer, who was like the comic book king. After Blade, he just kept writing comic book movies. And so they were like, why don't we do beginning of Batman? Batman Begins.
That was Christopher Nolan's take, because, I mean, he was around at Warner Brothers because Insomnia was produced by Warner Brothers, and they're just like, hey, there's a bunch of projects that you could work on, Batman, probably Beetlejuice 2, because everyone was offered Beetlejuice 2.
Who ended up doing Beetlejuice 2?
Well, it ended up just being Tim Burton again, because...
And again, speaking about the fraudster elements of this guy, the fact that he was like, I want to do something that's never been done before. Tell the origin story, psychology, non-chronological, and it's like they did this dude this 10 years ago.
Nobody saw that, Jan.
Saying Batman Begins is non-chronological is both technically true and also a bit of a cheat. It's like one scene at the beginning and then the rest of the movie is in chronological order.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
no, it's intercut with other things that set up.
Once he's like in the League of Shadows, it goes pretty linearly from his childhood to him joining the League of Shadows.
Well, the first half is told in flashbacks, and then the second half is pretty much linear.
Yeah.
But yeah, Batman Begins is good. It's an okay
I
movie.
think it's a masterpiece. I still get a big kick out of it. It takes a lot from the comics and it modernizes it. And it really felt like the first time a live-action Batman movie kind of did what Bruce Timm did, which is talk about Batman and kind of capture why the character really worked.
But I can push myself to actually like it because there's a crucial element in that movie that's missing. I can't put my finger on what it is, but it's missing some color, some clownishness, if you will.
They try.
You show up for a Batman movie. It's what? It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. And at the end, all you get is a little card.
Yeah, that's all you get.
Yes. And I honestly I didn't know we would get a sequel. I just thought it was implying that you should watch the Jack Nicholson version after this.
Yeah, well, at the time, reboots didn't exist, as we talked in a Casino Royale episode. So a lot of people thought that was a prequel to the 1989 Batman, and that Jack Napier was just leaving clown cards around for like 10 years.
I was just like, Jim Gordon just let himself go. He turned fat and incompetent.
And they broke the bat signal and they had to get a new one.
Well, and everyone forgot about who Batman was. And then it's just like, oh, why does everything look like all Caligari like later on when he fights the Joker? Because, yeah, as a kid, I'm just like, also the movie announced itself as Batman Begins. It's not just called Batman or The Dark Knight. It is just Batman Begins. So you automatically think it's a prequel to Batman and Robin, the movie series beforehand. So as a dumb kid, I was like, this doesn't make any sense, but I guess I'll buy it.
Well, I always assumed it was a prequel to the Adam West version, but go on.
Oh,
I always assumed it was a prequel to the toy commercials in the late 80s where Batman and Robin are advertising toys that keep getting stolen by the Joker and the Riddler and the Penguin. Oh, another note, while we talk about that scene real quick, I'm going to be beating this drum this whole episode. People talk about Christopher Nolan doing his own take on Batman and not really following the comic. But there's so many moments in his take ripped straight from the comics. And the whole playing card thing with the Joker, like, that's the ending to Batman Year One. Like,
well, not the playing card, but...
Not the playing card, but the idea that you end with Commissioner Gordon calling Batman to the rooftop to go after this Joker guy.
Because the entirety of Batman Year One is a gritty crime story.
And Catwoman.
Yeah, and Catwoman. And Batman Begins isn't really a gritty crime story. That's more so The Dark Knight, ironically.
Yeah.
But it's about the promise of the Batman you know and love will fight the villains you know and love later on.
Which you didn't really do, but...
We'll talk about that. I mean, I think if you really think about it, Batman and the Joker in the Nolan verse have about the same length of a career. Like, they're active for about the same period of time, and then they just stop.
Right. So they make the movie. Batman Begins is a critical hit. Pretty good box office hit. They're like, all right, it looks like you're doing a sequel, which Christopher Nolan wasn't really counting on doing. Because he was just like, oh, I'm just making, this is my piece on doing like a big blockbuster entertainment, something in the vein of Raiders or the first Superman movie where you get a bunch of stars, not as big of a star in the lead, and have like a good, nice, fun popcorn movie.
And then you fuck off to the Caribbean and...
Exactly. But then they're just like, hey, you could do a sequel, which Christopher Nolan had been toying around with David S. Goyer about like, what could we possibly do? Because the end scene of Batman Begins is about escalation and the Joker, so that was a starting off point.
What could we do in the sequel? What about the Joker?
What about what we set up in the last movie, literally, in the last scene?
Which is an intimidating task because everyone was, Jack Nicholson was still on everyone's minds at the time because they're just like, oh, we're going to have to compete with that. And before 2008, no one would want to touch the Joker cinematically because Jack Nicholson was the guy. Like, he was the biggest critical darling, like, actor to play like a comic book villain.
And he just done The Departed. Like, he was offended that he wasn't invited back to play the Joker.
Yeah, he was like, I'm the Joker. Why am I not the Joker? Because, again, reboots were not a thing. Like, the idea that a comic book superhero would fight the same supervillain again.
But this also speaks to the fact that we're on our fifth episode of this podcast. And we've only covered one previous film that was meant for the big screen, essentially.
Well, the 1966 Batman was meant for the big screen.
All right. It speaks to the delineation between film and television basically up until the 2010s, where it's just like if you played it on TV, it literally doesn't count. It doesn't matter. It's not real.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially if it's animated, then it really doesn't count. And
Because to be clear, the Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are still playing Batman and the Joker during these films.
Well, Kevin Conroy actually played the Nolan vs. Batman at the time.
He did.
Of The Dark Knight, because they made the animated tie-in Batman Gotham Knight, which told the story of what happened in between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And it's an anime, but Kevin Conroy plays Batman. And it's kind of off to hear him come out of a young Bishonen Bruce Wayne.
What's supposed to be Christian Bale. Also, I don't even think that movie really counts anymore, even though it was advertised as like, this is what happened. I'm like...
It kind of fits, but it's not quite the same because like the Narrows are out in like the middle of nowhere, and like the Russian and Sal Maroni are like way too at each other's throats, so it doesn't really work. But you do get to see Killer Croc. You get to see Scarecrow in costume.
Well, this movie also, like, the movie that we will talk about, The Dark Knight, chun chun chun, I think it's so well regarded as a sequel because a lot of people just watch it on its own.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people ignore Batman Begins.
That's the weird thing about The Dark Knight. It is one of those sequels, it's like, it's not even really thought about as a sequel. And even the title of the Nolan run of Batman movies is called The Dark Knight Trilogy.
Yeah.
So The Dark Knight is just held in such high esteem, even though Batman Begins was a hit and was a critical hit and people like it, but it is completely overshadowed by The Dark Knight.
I'm sorry, that was very like, even though Batman Begins was a critical hit, some people say The Dark Knight has overshadowed it. Some people say this way, some people say this way. I like them.
Let's take a look and find out.
Let's take a look and find out. No, but it's true. It's just that, like, it's not like Godfather Part 2, where Godfather Part 2 is like, this is the best sequel of all time. It's like The Dark Knight, in its very title, is disassociated from Batman Begins.
And also, you can totally watch it on it. Like, you really don't need any context. Like, you totally get, like, okay, he's got a girlfriend, all these things.
We can speak a little more about it when we get to the sequence, but really the only hint at a larger, like, comic booky world is the reappearance of the Scarecrow, which could easily not have been there. It's more of just like, I mean, it's almost like a gag.
Well, I enjoy it. This does speak to an interesting point about the screenwriting process of the film, which is that obviously starting in the early 2000s, I think every superhero movie director was thinking in terms of their trilogy. You had Raimi, you had Bryan Singer thinking in terms of the trilogy and like how each movie goes into it. So when they were thinking about ideas, Goyer and Nolan were like, okay, we'll do the Joker in the second one and have Harvey Dent in it. And then maybe at the end of the second one or the beginning of the third one, Harvey Dent becomes scarred and becomes Two-Face, and that's how we end the trilogy. But I forget if Goyer is still on board when they make this call or if this is a choice Christopher Nolan makes with his brother Jonathan. But they make the decision that instead of doing that trilogy, they go, why don't we just do the Two-Face story in The Dark Knight and tell the whole story we want to tell in one movie? Which I think is why this movie feels so complete.
Yes.
It takes what could have been a trilogy of developments and just tells it in one go.
Well, that's what Christopher Nolan was aiming for, because he's just like, he operated on the premise that I probably won't do another one.
Yeah, and I love that about it. Like, I remember being a dumb fucking kid watching this, and when his face gets blown up, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the next one.
We'll talk about this now. One of my best friends in like grade school, we were on a road trip to Washington, D.C. in early 2009 as a class, and they brought the DVD of The Dark Knight to watch, and he had never seen it. So when Harvey's face gets scarred, my friend, who would become co-valedictorian of our class, very smart, he's like, well, that was a good movie, everyone. Long. But I quite liked it. Who knows where we'll go in the next one with this?
Visuals and imagination.
I'm like, John, we have an hour left. We have to do the whole Two-Face thing. And he's like, what?
Yeah, so I was very happy as a kid when I'm like, oh no, this is like a movie. It's like, remember those?
We spent enough time talking about the production in Batman, but let's talk about Mr. J himself.
Let's talk about our boy. Okay, so
let's talk about the big Heath Ledger. He actually gets involved because I guess Nolan was talking to him about playing Bruce Wayne back when he was making Batman Begins, and he wasn't interested in doing the part. But then when The Dark Knight came out, Heath Ledger actually came to him and was like, I kind of want to do the Joker. And Christopher Nolan was already,
you idiot,
you know, racking his head around, okay, how do we tackle the Joker? Because everyone, still thinks of Jack Nicholson. Like, what
and
do you
Heath
do
Ledger's
with that?
he's a terrible choice. He's a fucking Abercrombie and Fitch 25-year-old.
Well,
he's like a romantic lead at this point.
Yeah.
Not even a bit to say he is like one of the biggest twinks of his era.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
He's a dreamboat.
Gay community, write in. Is Heath Ledger actually a twink? I thought Jake Gyllenhaal was the twink in Brokeback Mountain.
I need to tell this story.
Oh no, what did you do to him?
I'll tell you, when Heath Ledger, I didn't do the pills were all him, but what I did do was when Heath Ledger got announced as the Joker, I think I was 10 or 11, me and my friends were like so offended at the prospect that the announcement was in a Rolling Stone magazine with him in the cover, and we went to the urinals and pissed on the magazine.
Well, you weren't the only
you pulled
ones.
your own little Michael Keaton protest.
Or a Daniel Craig as James Bond kind of thing.
Yeah, as a kid, the Heath Ledger protest was like my third time we did this. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just wait till the movie. It keeps happening.
They keep casting actors.
I remember at the time everyone was freaking out. And to be honest, there was a lot of homophobic statements that were said because he had just appeared in Brokeback Mountain.
Whoa, the 2000s being homophobic? What?
Yeah, I know. Believe it or not. No, but like people were going like Brokeback Joker. What the hell is this?
What a total own, man.
People were saying this shit. And I thought it was like a weird choice because I'm like, Heath Ledger's not like, when you look at Jack Nicholson and you're just like, yeah, that guy looks crazy. And when you look at Heath Ledger, he's just like,
he's so hot.
He's just a guy.
Yeah. But then, like, also, I feel like because of the Joker for our generation, we were like, oh, was actually an incredible actor. Like, Brokeback Mountain, for example, like, when we were kids, we only knew it as that movie that MTV would make fun of. And then we watch it, and it turns out to be the most beautiful movie, like, ever, that brings you to tears.
Remember when Brokeback Mountain was mocked so hard they gave Best Picture to Crash, which did not even come out in 2005. It did not come out in 2005. I cannot emphasize this enough. Not only is it awful, it did not come out in 2005.
And the Oscar goes to Rocky again.
Do you remember who announced that Brokeback Mountain lost the Best Picture winner? Do you remember who it was?
I think, wasn't it Jack Nicholson?
Yeah, it was Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
And he goes like, Crash.
Yeah, he shaved his head in protest for not being Joker.
Okay, so Heath Ledger's cast as the Joker.
They did almost have Paul Bettany and Willem Dafoe, among others, as backup options.
Great actors, but for this movie, I'm glad it's Heath. But Christopher Nolan he had conversations with Heath Ledger. He's just like, hey, so what do we do? Because we need to make it different. And they had a lot of discussions about him being like Alex in A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. Sid Vicious, Johnny Rotten.
Yeah.
The makeup was based on Francis Bacon, which totally goes back to Batman 89.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, both of the best Jokers ever, inspired by Francis Bacon.
I kind of like this one, Bob.
Both Prince appreciators, you could say.
Yes.
Yes. Well, they do both wear purple.
Heath Ledger also requested that he applied the makeup himself.
Yes. And a lot of his mannerisms were his reaction to how much he hated certain parts of the makeup.
Well, yeah, the tongue is because his prosthetic kept, like, falling off, apparently. And, like, the whole makeup thing is so great because, like, you can see the makeup, like, under his finger. Like, there's such an attention to detail.
And there's also stains on his costume, even.
This does bring up my point. This is where I think we start losing the thread with the Joker, as in the Joker is classically the Joker because he's forced to look like that. Like he fell into a vat, now he's all white, and that's like his core character. This idea that the Joker can just take off being the Joker. Now you get weird stuff like the Barry Keogh Joker and the Joaquin Phoenix Joker, and it just feels like they're making Joker optional. I like Joker mandatory. I like where he wakes up Joker.
But the scars are mandatory.
Yeah, well, the scars are permanent, number one. Number two.
Yeah.
Unlike Jack Nicholson's Joker, where he has an origin story, and even in Mark Hamill's Joker that we've just seen, who also has an origin story.
He has like 5.
But in this one, it's just that he is there. There's no elaboration on where he came from, who is
Which
he.
I think is cool.
He is borderline a supernatural entity.
Yeah, which is my retort to your, well, he's just born like this. It's like, well, he just is the Joker. There is no other alias to him.
No name, no other alias.
Another fun part of how Heath prepared for the role was he apparently spent 6 weeks by himself in a motel because he was so wigged out about like going up against Jack Nicholson that he needed to like get him out of his head. And he went in and he spent 6 weeks in the motel just like writing jokes about AIDS to like figure out the Joker character.
Brilliant.
Interesting.
Which is a lot like doing this podcast.
Well, that seems like method acting done right.
Yeah, there's a lot of hearsay about like how method was he, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Some people say like this is the role that killed. No, he died because the poor guy was addicted to sleeping pills. But you know,
No, because apparently, like he was chill on set. Like we'll talk about it when we get the scenes. Like people were scared of him while he was doing the performance, but like he was chill on set. I think I read somewhere that he was excited for the sequel. And he apparently, the last time his family had dinner with him, he was just doing the Joker voice as like a goof, paving the way for all the white boys, actually everyone, all Americans,
Yeah.
and all over the world who would do his stupid Joker voice.
I'm the Joker, baby.
everyone for Halloween. We were all the Joker for Halloween, and you fucking know it.
I for sure was the Joker for Halloween.
Me
that year.
too.
Did the voice and everything.
I lost the Halloween costume contest to another Joker.
There's this great SNL sketch where this guy's at a wedding and it's on Halloween and it's like, you gotta tell Carl he can't be best man because he's dressed as Joker. And he's like, well, let me be dressed as Joker. And it truly is the fundamental question of our time. Let us be dressed as Joker.
There was just something about this performance that was so, like, imitable.
Yeah,
You know?
no, it was. It was just Heath Ledger just comes out and he has this weird ass voice and the makeup is like all punk rocky and shit.
But it looks cool. It's scary, but cool. Like, the Joker's never looked cool before, you know? Well, Cesar Romero was pretty cool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was an interesting take because Christopher Nolan, his story, yes, chaos, escalation, yeah. He took two cinematic supervillains, Joker and Two-Face, and he's like, what if we made them cool and great? And it paid off.
Yeah, it did. And it's so cool that, okay, I've been wanting to tell this story. My football coach in high school
Uh-oh.
was...
I don't like where this is going.
he was absolutely obsessed with the Joker.
Uh-oh.
This is going from bad to worse.
This is kind of a
Is this the guy you
microcosm of...
compared to J.K. Simmons in Whiplash?
This is
Yes.
Jake's origin story.
Oh,
This is
no.
my origin story. No, but like this was The Dark Knight was such a big hit, and the Joker was such an iconic character of
the Obama time.
of the Obama time.
Even though this movie is about George W. Bush. But continue.
Right. So you had people that were, you know, forming their ideologies based on the Joker. And my coach was one of those people. He actually named our defense Joker defense because they needed to introduce a little anarchy and upset the established order. I remember the very first football rally I went to, they did like a whole thing where they would the football players would carry around a coffin, and they had like people
This is weird.
dressed as people from the opposing team like come in and like fuck shit up, and then they like come in and they're like saying like, yeah, you guys are gonna lose, and then all of a sudden from out of the coffin a fist comes up and it's my football coach dressed in full Joker regalia,
God.
and he beats the shit out of students. And I swear to God, this man, he's just like, I love the Joker so much that when I was a senior, he wanted all of us to see The Dark Knight Rises together. And even up until COVID, he was being interviewed by Fox News, and he was talking about how like kids should be out practicing during the pandemic. And behind him is a poster of Braveheart, and right next to that poster is a Joker mask.
Well, they're just the same people deep down at heart.
This guy's my hero.
Yeah, no, that's the thing about the Joker is that for a lot of people, he's just like, he represented this anti-establishment, fuck shit up mentality, which is bizarre. That is how iconic this character was.
Yeah, if there was any doubt that this Joker started a movement, it's a little Kurt Cobain and it's a little
It's a little Bart Simpson, if you really think
well, it is a
about
little Bart Simpson.
It's a little Obama too.
That's interesting to talk about. So this movie came out in 2008. The year Obama was elected. We all know Batman is George W. Bush. We're not even debating this.
Yeah, the Patriot Act.
Who is the Obama figure? Is it Joker or is it Harvey Dent?
No, it's Harvey.
Or is Harvey Dent McCain? And becoming Two-Face is putting Sarah Palin on
Yeah,
the
you know
ticket.
what? Fuck it. Yes to everything. Open and closed. Moving on.
Let's get into the movie. This is the weird thing about the movie. Paul, we were talking about this the other day. You know, Batman Begins has like the air of like, you know, it's still stylized in a way, the way Gotham City looks. It's still like a back lot and it's lit with like yellows and there's a bunch of smoke.
There's like a CGI train.
Yeah, the very first shot of this movie is just an IMAX shot of a building in the daytime.
Yes.
In Chicago.
And you
In
can see a
Chicago.
little bit of the helicopter reflected on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the most plain, bare essentials, like,
Yes. Literally from frame one, we get into the magic of this movie, I think, which is like, obviously, this is a very intentional statement from, you know, Mr. Nolan, because it's a shift from Batman Begins. And it's a shift from the Tim Burton era of making the movie so dark that, you know, 20, 30 years later, we're still arguing over,
what did the movie look like?
were we supposed to see anything?
It
You know?
starts in broad daylight, which is insane. You know?
It's a
like,
bold choice. I think what we'll get into, which I think is there's a kind of alchemy happening here where I don't know if he even knew just how crazy that would be. Within what I think I wrote down 90 seconds. 90 seconds we get the Jokers. The Joker's gang, they're back.
Yeah. Again, Christopher Nolan's taking from previous versions of the Joker. He's bringing the clown henchman into live action.
we gotta mention, so this was my experience, my first introduction to this movie. I went to see I Am Legend in IMAX with a friend of mine when I was 12, and they played this scene in full. The entire sequence. This version didn't start with the Batman logo. It just started with the building and everything, and I just thought that entire time, like, holy shit, I Am Legend is gonna be sick as fuck. I am loving this. And then the fucking clown guy takes off his mask, is the Joker. He looks cool. I apologize to Heath Ledger for pissing on him. I come, I hoot, I holler, and then
How old were you?
I was 12. And then this movie becomes my most anticipated movie ever up to that point. Like, the hype for this movie was insane.
The marketing campaign for this movie was insane. The websites that would trick you, the little drops they did, like, it's so weird to think now that people were so hyped just for a Batman versus Joker movie, which hypothetically we had already gotten.
Many times before.
Yeah, but we were like, oh man, this time it's going to be really good.
Yeah. I remember those posters. They made an impression too.
Well, the marketing campaign was like all teasing the Joker for a certain extent. Like there was that first picture of Christopher Nolan directing behind the scenes and Heath Ledger's behind like fogged glass. And then there was the poster that was like, why so serious? And even the first teaser trailer that premiered in the front of the Bourne Ultimatum was just...
It was just his voice and his laugh.
And the Batman logo, and then some men just want to watch the world burn speech, and then a little bit of the Joker's voice, and you're just like, what is this? And then finally the theatrical trailer came out in like December?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I remember very vividly just like those fake Google posters from back in the day, which would have like a still of Heath Ledger from A Knight's Tale, but edited to look like the Jack Nicholson Joker.
Oh, for a while, people just straight up used Conrad Veidt photoshopped to give him more grungy hair and say, this is Heath Ledger as the Joker. There was a full-on like fan-made trailer where someone photoshopped what the Joker makeup is supposed to look like onto a clip of Heath Ledger from a different movie. And that was circulating around at the time. Like, the marketing for this movie was insane, but we should really get back into the beginning of the movie.
So this beginning is, I think, again, as Paul said, it kind of shows the whole approach to what this movie is going to be. It feels like a high-stakes heist, like any heist movie. All the clowns are robbing a bank one-on-one. You have William Fichtner as like a bank manager who works for the mob, which Heat, right?
It's a nod to Heat. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Not to Heat, but they're all wearing clown masks because it's a comic book movie. And that's where I think the brilliance of this movie is that it takes incredibly comic book concepts and is very faithful to those comic book concepts, but it just sets them in as real a world as it can, and it just clicks.
It's not really a real world. It's more so like the language of the Michael Mann movie, specifically Heath.
Yeah.
The tone is grounded, but that doesn't mean that what's happening is realistic, which is what people don't get. Like,
no, that's the thing. It's impressive how, you know, you can throw off people, and some people still are under the impression that like they razz on Nolan for being like our most like literally minded filmmaker or something, which is insane to me.
time travel guy and cloning Hugh Jackman guy.
Yeah, exactly. But clearly in this scene, you've got the music going ape shit. You've got crazy dolly stuff. You got the cross cutting. You got
It's the first use of IMAX cameras in a blockbuster.
all the tricks are being used here. It's movie stuff. I mean, this is still a movie where Christian Bale has the eye makeup that magically disappears and so on.
I love that they do that. Yeah.
But my point is, it's not realistic. But we start with an image of Chicago, and then everything else is like a bus coming through a wall like a cartoon. But you still think, as an audience member, like, well, this is real life. That's the magic of it.
Well, here's the thing about the school bus. It's not just that the school bus comes in through the bank. It comes in right after.
It has comedic timing.
Yes. It introduces the Joker as smart, and he's funny.
I kill the bus driver. What bus driver? Bus driver comes in, kills him immediately.
Then the bus driver comes out. He's like, what happened to the other guy? And just shoots him.
Yeah, it's like movie logic. It's like, why would the bus come in? This is not realistic, but you're just
Well,
fully...
it's movie logic, but it's also funny. Like, this is Nolan's funniest movie, hands down.
The Joker in this is, I mean, he's not funny like making fart jokes and stuff. He's like sardonic funny, but he's hilarious.
He's like us. He's like us funny.
Yes.
He's cool like us. Yeah.
That's why our podcast is called Sardonic Cast, right, guys?
But the scene ends with a little taste of what's to come, because we get William Fichtner on the nose talking about the criminals in this town used to believe in things. Honor, respect. What do you believe in? Joker reveals himself and says, I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you...
Stranger.
Thus, we are set up with, this isn't just a mob person or a common criminal. This is a complete force of nature, movie-esque villain that is going to come in and create all sorts of fucking shenanigans for the rest of the movie, with Batman, who is solely focused on weeding out corruption and something that is tangible.
Gentle listeners, you can see how foundational this movie is to our psyche by how often we'll describe what it's doing well as it's doing movie.
It's doing
Like,
movie.
this is what movies should be.
This movie invented movies.
Within this sequence, the Joker that you're seeing, it's less literal than Jack Napier, right?
Yeah.
It's more cartoon than the cartoon, but he's on location in Chicago, and that's the magic, right?
Yeah.
What I love about
Right.
this movie is it is the Joker, because it is this concept of like, what if I took a crime drama like Heat and I just threw in like the devil in it, like literally just like a supernatural figure that's just gonna give this city like the worst week of its life, you know?
And
there's
Batman.
and there's a bad guy fighting him, I guess. You know?
Yeah, the bad guy Batman, yeah.
Yeah, Batman. No, I mean, that's the thing is, like, at the time, people are like, Heath Ledger's Joker is such a rich departure from, like, the Mark Hamill Joker. And I'm like, he kind of feels like the same guy to me, except, as you guys said, he's just in the real world.
Yeah, and he's a little bit more droll than...
Yeah.
He's like Homer Simpson in that Treehouse of Horror when he appears in the real world and he's like, what is this? You know?
He's like, if Homer Simpson appeared in the real world and acted like Bart and sounded like Marge. It makes you a little stranger.
There's a lot to like with this character. There's a lot he really does it all.
Do I really look like someone who has a plan?
I wouldn't know what to do with the car when I got...
I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. My father was a drinker.
We could do this all.
Yeah, no, we can. So the Joker escapes at the perfect time of day when all the school buses are out.
Most sequels have to do a little table setting, a little remind you what's the status quo. In this movie, it's like 40 seconds of like the bat signal's on, criminals are scared, and then we're in a parking garage.
And Scarecrow's back. Again, Christopher Nolan, I gotta give him props for this, because again, everyone's like, these movies aren't comic booky. Christopher Nolan was the first guy to realize, hey, it's stupid that we get rid of all the villains after every movie. Why not have one villain just keep popping up in every movie as like a low-level guy? And I love how the Scarecrow pops up in all of his movies.
And
it's
here
so much
he's
fun.
just like an initial guide to foil, but like going back to Paul's point, it's not just that we're getting like one point of view. We're getting like the point of view of like every single class of character in Gotham City, because we have the news broadcast. What does the entire city as a whole think about Batman with Anthony Michael Hall as Mike Engel? We get the villains who are going away, like, nah, I don't want to be out at night because the bat signal is out. We get the police department that's supposedly hot on the trail, and what do they think of Batman?
You mean the MCU?
Yes.
It is funny how much this movie says MCU.
And I love that even to like ground it even more, they do mention like it is very unlikely that you'll run into the Batman in a city of like 20 million people.
Right. It's that irrational fear, and you're just like, okay, I get what Batman's impact on crime is. I get what the police think about him because they have the bat signal upstairs. And Detective Ramirez just comes up to Gordon while he's waiting at the bat signal.
He's a boogeyman.
Yeah, he's a boogeyman. And like the cops know he exists, but they kind of just don't care because they're in cahoots with him. And then we get Batman in action, which is when Scarecrow shows up.
Yeah, and he's trying to sell his fear gas to the Russian because now people on the streets of Gotham are just tweaking off the horrifying hallucinogenic that almost wiped out the city last.
Batman has made an impact on the drug trade in Gotham City, so now crime bosses are buying the Scarecrow's fear toxin, just because they're like, well, we need to sell drugs somehow.
The first time I watched this movie, I thought that the plot was gonna be that the Joker was gonna get hold of a drug and make that the Joker toxin.
Yeah, that's what I thought they were logically going to.
But no, his plan is just to shoot people.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that the fear toxin, if you haven't seen Batman Begins, they don't explain what it is at all. Like, it could just be some random drug, right?
So yeah, here we get the copycat Batman, and this has like one of the funniest shots in cinema history, in my opinion, which is the first notes of the Batman thing, the chun chun, but we cut, and it's just like a fat guy.
With a gun. Like, it's so interesting. Nolan establishes who Batman is by showing us who he's not, which is an overweight guy in hockey pads with a giant gun.
It's intercut with the actual Batman, like taking out other guys, but then you're confused because then there's just like a random fat guy with hockey pads on, just with no eye makeup.
Yeah, beats up some guys. He gets bit by a dog, which was very funny that it's like one of the biggest like running threads in this movie is dogs.
It was a big dog.
And here's when I realized that Christopher Nolan is a fraud, because when he jumps on the van, he jumps on it like to the side, but he lands on it like looking front. And I was like, this man does not know what he's doing. I don't know why they gave him this.
This isn't real life. This is like some kind of movie or something.
But so far, both the scenes we introduced, the criminals are going to be different. And we get the introduction of Batman's role of, as pointed out by the fat guy in hockey pads, what gives you the right?
Yes.
We're just here to help you. I don't need help. What gives you the right? I'm not wearing hockey pads.
The two specters that will surround the ideas of this movie.
It also solidifies that Batman is kind of in control of Gotham at this point. Like, he very much is on top of it. Literally, he's on top of the car.
It also solidifies that Nolan is more in control because the action now is amazing and the music is slapping fucking hard. Apparently Hans Zimmer based this score in Kraftwerk, which kind of makes sense. Did you guys know that?
Wait, Kraftwerk?
Like the band Kraftwerk, like Autobahn.
Like kind of industrial, right?
Industrial and a lot of like repetitive beats. And I don't know why, but it works so fucking well.
So we go back to his temporary Batcave.
Again, because even though he didn't do anything with the Batcave in the first movie, this is his main Batcave. This is actually where he operates for most of his Batman stuff. But he's so invested in the damn caves under Wayne Manor anyway.
Yes.
And he quips with Alfred. It's very chummy.
And you get to see his back, which is all bit up.
Yes.
And it looks like a famous Alex Ross painting where you see all the wounds of the Batman got, including a big animal bite on his arm. So again, taking straight from the comics for the cinematic composition.
Wait, of course, this is from the previous movie, but it also makes this movie feel more unique. That the Batcave is just like a storage room, you know? And
it's a car showroom.
In the background, it seems to just go on forever in like this weird abyss.
And I heard Nolan talking about this, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, he said, like, he tried to work it in thematically. The fact that Batman's place is his penthouse, his Batcave storage room. It's not like these gothic things anymore. It's like these modern, like, very symmetrical, orderly, minimalist spaces. The contrast with the chaos of Mr. Society. You know what I mean? Like,
But the cave is still really surreal looking and just
hey, don't quote me. I'm just quoting known fraudster Christopher Nolan.
No, it's right, but it's still pretty surreal to look at.
Well, it's clean. Yes.
Well, again, it is interesting. I think Paul's hinted at this, that surprisingly in this movie, Nolan very much associates Batman with the light. He's often in light. There's a couple scenes where he gets a lot of effectiveness of him being in shadows, but often where Batman does his work is in complete brightness and complete light and fully exposed areas, which is different from most versions of Batman where he's a creature of the dark, which shows, again, the thematic aim of this movie is to depict Batman solely as a warrior of the light, whereas with the Tim Burton version, you weren't exactly sure where in the moral spectrum his Batman truly resided.
Yeah.
Right. In this case, it's like Batman is not a mystery in the Nolan verse, like hardly at all, really. I mean,
yeah, I once read this article about the Adam West Batman, the Michael Keaton Batman, and the Christian Bale Batman, and how each Batman was formed by the first time Alfred caught them touching themselves. And so this was a very interesting article.
This is a Jan bit.
I should find it. We should put it on our socials.
Is this fan fiction?
Let him speak.
The Adam West Batman, he has no idea what's going on when he's doing this, and Alfred will not tell him. And so he has to sublimate it, and so he acts out in weird ways by wearing tight spandex and labeling everything and getting in a weird relationship with Catwoman and roping around. Like, he doesn't understand what he's really doing, but it's like he's basically a pervert. Then we have the Michael Keaton Batman, who is found touching himself, and Michael Gough is like a proper Englishman. He's like, that's not very mannered, Mr. Wayne. I taught you how to ride a horse.
Yeah.
That's not how that works. You need to do that in public. You can do it there, but just it's dirty.
And what, Michael Caine just cries and quits?
No, when Michael Caine found Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne, he was like, "Oi, Master Wayne, that's a perfectly normal thing you're doing, but you better know how to be safe. Here's some sex education. I sure you fancy that Rachel girl you know. That's perfectly normal." So the Nolan Batman is on a logical mission to systematically take down crime. It makes sense. And the article argued that's why the Nolan Batman sucks, is because he's not a pervert. He makes too much sense. He's too properly attuned to what he has to do.
He's not crazy enough.
See, that's the thing. I love the Nolan Batman movies because they really delved into the psychology, and I thought they made a really logical case for why he becomes Batman. But then I turned on it when I realized Nolan also tries to make the logical case for when you stop being Batman, which, as we all know, is immoral.
Of course.
Right.
Much like writing long essays about the first time 3 different incarnations of Batman touched themselves.
Yeah, Master Wayne, your grandfather used to touch himself just like this, Master.
That's why they called it the Underground Railroad.
That's why they called it the Underground Railroad.
I will not check off another Batman.
Know your limits, Master Wayne. Batman has no limits.
I'm coming.
But it is worth noting, even though it's not really laid out in this film, but I think it does hang over it, and it's telling for the filmmaker's interpretation, right? Is that we see the origin of Batman, and Batman goes in with a specific project, right? The case that's made for Batman is not just that crime exists, it's that organized crime has infested the local government and there's corruption, so the normal levers of justice aren't working. That's part of his justification.
It's that Al-Qaeda hates our freedom, and anywhere could be an attack on the good people of the United States. I mean, Gotham.
Right. So that had already happened, and immediately, as soon as Bruce does his first action scene, the point of discussion is, can you really keep this up?
Yeah.
He's succeeding, but can he continue? It's not going to last forever.
Well, I do like that he's only been Batman for like a year.
And he's like, I'm over it.
And just from that year, he becomes like completely disabled in the next movie.
Well, it's like the Smallville problem, where you've seen, whether it's Batman Begins or 10 seasons of Smallville, you've seen him like talk so much about how he has to do this thing. And he actually does the thing, and next thing you know, he quit. And you're like, what? You're hyping yourself up for it for so long.
Batman Begins. The next movie, Batman Ends.
We're already at the Dark Knight Returns.
Exactly. But yes, and with this question raised, we cut to Harvey Dent, the most badass lawyer that's ever been put on screen.
Yes, like the most seemingly incorruptible, nice guy.
Cracks wise, flirts with his girlfriend, punches a guy in the face.
Basically, Robert Redford at a sharper angle, which is what they were going for when they cast Aaron Eckhart over like Hugh Jackman. Okay, but let's talk about this scene. This scene is crazy. So
it's insane.
Sal Maroni has stepped in to fill in the Carmine Falcone crime family. He's taken over. He's played by Eric Roberts, who is in everything that you don't watch because it's bad and cheap.
Watch Star 80 because that is like one of the best performances I've ever seen.
That's a great performance, yeah.
Watch the Killer's music videos he's in too. That's good too. So he is on trial. This is like the main criminal in Gotham. This is like the big guy. They've been going on forever. And this whole high-profile trial that they had to bring indictments, they had to arrest him for it, they had to put him in jail. This whole trial is built on one witness who's doing his tight five.
Yeah, it's literally a dueling improv in the court.
Yeah, and Harvey Dent, the district attorney that everyone loves, he's the Obama of his time, which was Obama's time. He somehow has built an entire case on some guy who's like, I did it, district attorney. And he's like, Judge, the witness sucks. My key witness is
I'm just
garbage.
gonna punch him.
Yeah, and he's like, suck on this. And he's like, gonna shoot him. And then he does karate, and he takes apart the gun. And he's like, something, made in China. Next time you're gonna shoot me, buy in America, you commie. And everyone's like, yeah.
It's not just that. He's just like, all right, we're gonna take a recess. And then Harvey Dent's like, but Your Honor, I'm not done.
And everyone claps.
Yeah, and then everyone claps. It's that, like, this guy doesn't care if a guy will pull a gun on him or if, like, an entire city crumbles. He will do whatever it takes
What was anyone hoping
right
to
thing.
achieve in this scene? Was Harvey Dent hoping to get something out of this guy who he built his whole case on, but suddenly is just not cooperating and trying to kill him?
This is when you start to realize that Chris Nolan writes his movies like a dream. You know what I mean?
That Sal Maroni was just going to have this guy shoot Harvey Dent right in front of Sal Maroni and basically say, Sal Maroni told me to do it? What?
I always like to imagine the scene where, you know, the judge is like, we're going to take a break. And Harvey Dent's like, wait, but I'm not done. Everyone claps. And then that's where the scene ends. But I like to imagine it keeps going. And the judge is like, no, seriously, we need to take a break.
I have to poop so bad. So two things. You hear the gun click before Harvey takes it out to show that he's lucky and to obviously invoke the near assassination of Andrew Jackson, who also was almost shot by a misfiring gun that didn't go off because he was lucky, but he was also awful.
But at this point, Harvey Dent isn't awful.
But he's awful deep down. My other point is between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, I like how Christopher Nolan, I think, thinks stuff like Jack Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald happens like all the time in like the American courtrooms, because it happens in Batman Begins. Like in Gotham, Jack Rubying is just like a common thing. And it's not like Batman Forever, where Batman will sit in the courtroom in case anything bad happens. No one's doing any precautions on all this Jack Rubying that's going on.
We get a sequence of basically setting up all these relationships.
Yes, so Rachel Dawes is now played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, not Katie Holmes, because she made that cinematic classic Mad Money.
Yes, which nobody saw.
Everybody's tracking everybody else because Gordon's doing his Rico. Well, not Rico yet.
Gordon doesn't even know what Rico is.
Yeah, apparently not.
Yeah, no, because they make a whole point in the movie where Harvey Dent has to explain to Gordon what Rico is.
Rico. In a Rico case, if you can charge one of the conspirators with a felony, you can charge
all of them with it. That's great.
Which is like the most basic organized crime. If you live in a city that is run on organized crime, if you live in any sort of society and you're a cop, you probably know what Rico is. Most people know what Rico is.
Rico, who is that guy? Who's this Rico?
Important thing to point out here is that if Gordon sometimes seems checked out of the movie, Gary Oldman did not want to come back for another movie. He did not want to play Gordon again. He tried to fight to get out of this film shoot because it wasn't as fulfilling as playing like Sirius Black.
He's so good in this movie.
Yeah, but his contract forced him to be in it, and by God, if he doesn't give like his best performance,
it's great.
He's so awesome in this movie.
He's
yeah,
pretty fantastic, I gotta say.
And he's doing a completely different voice than in Batman Begins.
Taste for the theatrical, like you.
No, you can't. You're not.
Yeah, you got a little less Midwesty.
The Joker.
I gotta say, the first like probably 5 times I saw this movie, the line where he's like, if I didn't work with cops that you'd investigated at Internal Affairs, then I'd be working alone. It's like this weird, like fast mumble, like you can't understand what he's saying.
If I didn't work with cops you'd investigated while you were making your name at IA, I'd be working alone.
What the fuck are you saying?
Okay, I had to turn on the subtitles during the scene because I'm like, what the hell is he saying?
I don't know. Look at that mustache.
I know.
It was just the scene, but this scene is also very important for setting up, well, the end of the movie when Harvey Dent confronts Gordon, sets up everything of like, you're just working with corrupt cops.
Oh yeah, that's so funny that like Gordon is like working with Batman and also like all the bad cops, and he's so stupid that like he can't figure that out.
Well, Gordon isn't like stupid. He's just like, this is all I have. These are all the people that are just fine with me talking to Batman.
I mean, sometimes his stupidity turns out to be right, but I kind of like that about this movie, that it's just like, you know, Gordon tells Batman, like, Batman, we need to take down the Joker. And Batman's like, dude, no. It's like, this is a clown guy. We're talking about the entire mob, you know, but I love how it escalates to the point where, like.
Speaking of that scene, where Batman shows up in that scene at the bank, is it me? Or in that scene, Batman looks like Vin Diesel?
Yes, he looks weird.
Like his neck is like really thick.
Well, the thing is, like, that's probably the most clearly you see him in the old suit.
Yes.
Yes.
So he looks fat.
He looks chubby, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not my favorite Batman costume. Even in 2005, I was not hot on that costume. Oh, but when I saw the new one for this movie where he can turn his neck, I'm like, finally. A Batman can turn his neck and kick.
It's tactical.
Another nerd nitpick point. The beginning of the movie, Joker robs a bank. We have a scene at night where Batman fights Scarecrow. Gordon is investigating the crime scene the next day. Did they take 24 hours to investigate a major bank heist that, like, killed at least, like, 7 people?
Yes.
But they were all bad.
Well, Gordon's a busy man.
We don't know if those grenades went off that were left in innocent people's hands, maybe. I don't know.
I guess we don't.
Anyway, playing cards. It's the Joker, that guy from a year ago I talked about.
What about this Joker guy? You know?
Well, they're just like, we're going after the mob. Who gives a shit?
This is like a petty criminal, and he looks like a clown.
Right, because again, Batman has an agenda,
Yes.
And he doesn't see this as relevant, you know. All this is going on, and it also just so happens that Wayne Enterprises has some business with this Chinese guy who's sketch.
Yeah. And the reason why they're doing business is because Batman's investigating him.
And Bruce Wayne's sleeping in the meetings because Christian Bale is the best Bruce Wayne. I don't care what anybody says.
Better than Kevin Conroy?
Well, you know what? I'm actually going to go there. I get why Kevin Conroy's Bruce Wayne is more of just a normal guy. And yes, he still is the best Batman ever. But I think Christian Bale is the only one who's been able to really pull off bored billionaire playboy. Like, you couldn't buy this guy as Batman.
Right.
He's kind of like Christopher Reeve in that sense, where like you really get the different personality.
The performance of Bruce Wayne is pretty tight. I was going to say, when we get to this restaurant scene where he just so happens to run into Rachel and Harvey, he's showing off his girlfriend, the Russian ballerina.
Prima ballerina.
And Harvey tries to be like, oh, we're going to see the ballet. And Bruce is like, oh, so you like ballet?
Yeah.
Really? So, you're into ballet?
And he's like, Rachel, you're dating a gay man. I'm Batman.
So, like, the Bruce Wayne shit in this, like, it's A+. It's A+.
It is.
And then they all sit down and talk about Cincinnatus and Julius Caesar and ancient Rome.
Yes.
And how the ancient Romans would put their faith in one man in times of crisis. And that one man would make all the decisions. And the DA, basically, it's like Anakin and Padme in the field, but like done right.
He's just like, yeah, do it.
Well, this is the first time where Batman just goes like, you know what? This guy really understands me.
Because he's like, look, Batman might be a fascist, but he's my fascist.
Yeah, this is an actually insane scene where Harvey Dent is basically, he says Batman for dictator, and Batman just goes like, I love you now.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's not just that, well, Batman has to operate like this because everything is fucked, but he can't do it forever because you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And he's like, by God, not only he gets my mission, but he also gets that I want to quit so I can fuck Rachel.
He gets why I thought I had to do it, but also that there should be something a little bit saner coming out the end of this. Of course, it's insane for an elected official to say this in public. You know?
Right.
In America, in the United States of America.
And the Russian ballet dancer is going like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is crazy.
The Russian national is like, this sounds problematic.
And so this is like one of the top 5 most quotable movies of all time. It's like this and The Big Lebowski, right? It's like,
well, yeah, but you're in an edgier mood if you're quoting The Dark Knight. If you're quoting The Dark Knight, like your life is breaking down, and you're like, I've either died a hero or lived long enough to be a villain.
And the wise words of Harvey Dent, he goes, it's like Lenin said, you look for the person who'll benefit, and
don't you say that about my good Mussolini light friend Harvey Dent. You would never quote Lenin.
Anyway, so the mob bosses are all together trying to figure out how to safely store their money because Batman is onto them. And the Joker comes in and goes like,
ooh, hee, ha, ha, ha.
Ooh, ee, ah, 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 ooh, ee. Well,
I mean, immediately we get, how about a trick?
Yes, and it's hilarious.
It's the greatest Joker trick that we've seen so far.
It's immediately like, I remember everyone in my theater laughing, and it's the perfect way to take your panties off and just like, okay, I can relax with this guy. I will follow him if he's falling above a bridge, you know?
Love at first sight.
Again, it's so weird. For years now, like the way people talk about Heath Ledger's Joker is that he's the scariest Joker or he's the serious Joker. But no, you're laughing out loud at like half of the stuff he does. He's a funny Joker.
He's so funny. I like the part where Gamble's like, you think you can just rip us off? And he's just like, yeah. It's great.
Let's not blow the sound before. Like, everything he's doing is a joke. It's just the way he looks and like the plot around it is like, oh,
yes.
these are terrorists that's trying to co-opt the mob to try to kind of marshal them as like a force against like Batman and the cops, right?
The real joke to him is society.
Okay, so this is an interesting point about society and this Joker, because this is kind of where this starts, the idea that Joker plays with society. But I think this movie still makes a very smart decision, and that the Joker, as he operates,
I like that when Troy talks about the
much-
Joker, he like closes his eyes and like it's like he's like a monk. Like,
Wait, okay, so the Joker, when he mutates, it's a mutation born out of organized crime. So even though people see this Joker as an anarchist, the way he operates is still very much at the beginning, almost like a satiric take on the hitman for the mob. So in many ways, this Joker is still following the same niche that the Jack Nicholson Joker and the Mark Hamill Joker previously had, except this Joker takes it to a whole nother level.
he has goons and all that stuff.
Well, him hiring himself out to kill Batman as this Trojan horse to get enough gunpowder and gasoline to do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, because we're seeing, I mean, part of the ingenious construction of the movie is that, yeah, up to this part and for quite a bit longer, you kind of think you kind of know what his game is. He's not so different psychologically from previous Jokers, and the rest of the movie is this kind of Heat thing, and you're like, okay, I understand. You know, it's Heat with the Joker in it, and then his true nature, you know, continues to reveal itself later on in the second half.
Also, like, he just commands so much presence, and like he looks like such a refined Joker gentleman that like when I remember that Heath Ledger was younger than me when he did the Joker, like I wanted to commit society. You know what I mean?
No, I think Jan raises a good point. It's kind of funny how people the generation above us were allowed to become adults while we have been trained through like 15 years of social media management to just keep our heads down and have no presence, which is why there are no movie stars anymore. Anyway,
like the Joker was taking down the bare bones of polite society by the time that I'm just like sitting on my ass playing Metroid Prime.
Jan, it's a movie.
No, it's not, dude.
He's an overachiever.
Also, Jan, Joker fails. It was Bane who finally took down society. So Joker says he's going to kill the Batman, which is the one thing he absolutely is not going to do.
Yes, it's just a joke. It's a prank.
Right. Well, yeah, he makes an offer to the five families, basically, and they think about it. Meanwhile, Lau has run off with all of their money.
In Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And Gordon and Dent and Batman get together.
Yes, which again is taken from the Batman comic, Batman the Long Halloween, that 3-part alliance, because again, Christopher Nolan took a lot from the comics that I don't think is fully appreciated.
It's such a swing to see Batman in China, just for one scene.
Yeah.
Like, we get to see how far Gordon, Dent, and Batman are willing to push things.
Go kidnap a billionaire.
Which, again, the federal government was doing this to people during this time. They were extraditing people out of I mean, it's basically what killed bin Laden.
Was Batman?
This is how, Dent and Batman get to meet, and he's like, I'm enlisting you. You can do something that I can't do, right?
Yeah.
And go to China and get this guy and blow up a building.
And I will make you dictator of Gotham City. And he's like, deal.
Yeah, so they go to Hong Kong, even though the McCormick Place building is visible in one shot. Batman has his first big action set piece, which, again, isn't as thematically tight in as other set pieces. But we do get a reappearance of an old friend from our Thunderball episode.
Ooh.
The Skyhook! From the end of Thunderball.
Right.
It's back.
I thought you were going to say Largo, and I got excited for a second.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Imagine if Largo was one of the gangsters, like you have Sal Maroni, the Russian, and Largo.
Jettison cocoon.
I thought he was going to be the Joker.
Do you remember a lot of things that the U.S. was doing from the 60s to the 70s? You remember Skyhook? You remember Rico?
Remember Batman?
Bringing back all these classics.
Remember the Joker?
Remember Robert Redford-esque dudes?
Skyhook is fun, but yeah, basically this is just kind of a crazy set piece. The one plot thing is that it sets up the phone.
Oh yeah, sonar, like a submarine.
But we should note, actually, before China is the Joker shows up at Gamble's hideout.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, the line.
And we get his first story.
The speech that everyone memorized.
You wanna know how I got these scars? I'm the Joker, baby!
Yes, but I dare say he may be giving Jack Nicholson a run for his money in terms of the scariest Joker. because this is basically like, it's like 2000s, like it's not quite torture porn, but it's like scuzzy.
It's amazing this movie was made for children and had action figures.
Yeah, it's like insane because a role like this could have been and has been come off as so fucking forced, right? I am looking at a certain particular damaged idea, man. But Heath Ledger actually completely disappears into the sky. Like, you don't see Brokeback Mountain or
you
Casanova
don't
at all.
or
It's
A Knight's
insane.
Tale.
Yeah.
No, but it's interesting because, again, Nolan has taken something from the comics. He's taken The Killing Joke, Multiple Choice Past, One Bad Day, but he has correctly latched on to something that I think a lot of Joker media doesn't. A lot of Joker media is like, oh, poor Joker, he got one bad day, dumbass. Poor guy. But no, Christopher Nolan's like, no, that old one bad day thing is manipulation. The Joker does these sob stories to like make fun of you for having empathy and like mess with you. And I think that's so effective how he keeps changing it.
I mean, it's such a stroke of genius, the multiple backstories. I very vividly remember my dad in the movie theater when he starts giving his second backstory about, you know, his wife, and my dad just going, he got me. He got me. Like, it was like his trick worked.
Yeah, but the knife kill is crazy, and also this scene is important because we get the whole thing about he takes the goons, but he won't take all of them.
They're going to have tryouts.
There's a choice, right? Everything's like dog eat dog, right? Everything is like the trolley problem, basically, right?
I was gonna say, like, I took some philosophy class in college, and there was this one professor who always used the Joker as an example. He was like your coach, Jake.
The Joker was his philosophy.
For every scenario that he put us, be like, let's say the Joker puts 100 people in an island. It's like,
let's say the Joker breaks a pool stick and then gives it to a bunch of goons and tells them to fight each other with it.
Let's say the Joker wants to abort his firstborn child.
Now, future historians might point out that, that's interesting that every adult figure just talked about how the Joker was so smart for 8 years and we elected Donald Trump. I maintain there was a cultural continuum that we all got a little too Jokered.
We're here to bring it back on this podcast. Anyway.
Troy, you might not be wrong.
I don't think I am.
Shockingly.
See, it's shocking. So something that I found really interesting was I was looking at the behind the scenes of this, and Christopher Nolan was saying that a main inspiration for the Joker was Borges. And I'm just like, what? Like, he was a surrealist writer that wrote about like magical like objects that the power of infinity. What does this have to do with the Joker? Does anyone know? Like, what the fuck?
So, Jan, here's a fun fact. You're the only one of us that reads.
I guess I'm on my own to figure that out.
Anyway, let's keep talking about the movie that we didn't have to read anything. Actually, the only bit you have to read, you don't even have to read it, is the subtitles when they're speaking Cantonese. But anyway, Batman gets Lau, brings him back, and they do the Rico.
Rachel Dawes is like, what have you done? And he's like, I put all their money in one big pot, and I'm gonna flip-flop as long as you keep me in the police station, which is important for later.
And Dent gets a big win, and the mayor is like, you're playing a dangerous game. And then psych, jump scare.
It's that guy from earlier, but he's dead.
I actually peed when I saw that.
It is so well timed.
Not even the first time, like yesterday, I peed.
And then we get the torture video
that Heath Ledger directed.
Yes, and obviously
it's very scary.
It's pretty spooky. And I think it's pretty funny that this movie is rated PG-13 for violence and some menace, famously. And
for
I think
violence and Joker.
They couldn't find a way to describe this video, right?
Yeah.
Like they're trying. We have to warn people about this somehow, even though it's PG-13. You know,
because again, this was seen as a kids movie still in the lead up to it, and then you watch it and you're like, oh my God. Like,
Though then again, Jack Nicholson Joker turned a guy into a skeleton.
That was pretty spooky.
That was pretty comparable.
it was scary, but it was cartoon violence. This is like actual
Handy cam in a meat locker.
Yeah.
And the voice changes.
Oh yeah, look at me.
It's so good.
You know what I did notice about this scene that I thought was weird, that I noticed for the first time? Every time they cut back to Alfred and Bruce, they're like closer to each other, which I don't know if that was like...
Do you think that Batman's TV is too low in that living room?
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell kind of design is it?
This might be a good time to bring this up. Is it not crazy that the city of Gotham has a whole news network dedicated to just the city of Gotham? Like it's CNN, but just for the city.
GNN, yeah.
That's wild to me.
Well, is it 24-hour? I don't know.
I thought that was the implication, but I guess we do only see Anthony Michael Hall, so it could be the name.
That's just the local news.
Local news, but there's so much like insane hostage videos that are like, we got to show you this right now. We're pausing days of our lives to show you this. And then we get, basically the tension for the middle. People will die until you turn yourself in. And who's he going to go after? Commissioner Loeb and the judge and Harvey.
Now, Commissioner Loeb is interesting. And again, if you want to get into the politics of this movie and the Nolan Batman movies, I think the way he adapts Commissioner Loeb is very interesting. Because in Batman Year One, where Commissioner Loeb was created by Frank Miller, he is like the king of corrupt cops.
He is unambiguously the most evil man in Gotham.
Like an awful, terrible man, gross. In the Nolan movies, he is like annoyed.
Well, he's more like Pat Hingle in the
he's
original Batman movies. He's just kind of befuddled and doesn't know what's happening.
He's ineffective, but he's fundamentally like a good guy, which is interesting to me because it tells me that Christopher Nolan could not depict, and this is basic truth about the Christopher Nolan movies, the police as an institution are not corrupt. The leaders are all good, and the institution itself is a moral right. The institutions of society are fundamentally solid. They may be ineffective, but it is impossible for them to become fully evil, which in most versions of Batman, they kind of are at this point. But Nolan makes the choice to show them as morally straightforward.
Well, you have like people like Flass.
Low level.
Yeah, low level.
Poor people. The rich people are all morally good. The poor people are where the issues come in Nolan.
Well, yeah, you don't see, you don't get into specific portrayals of like classic dirty cops. Like you don't really see those.
Even in this movie, every dirty cop like has a reason.
Yeah, they were coerced in some way.
And then of course, in The Dark Knight Rises, the cops are Batman sidekicks. Like literally, Robin's a cop.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically equal in heroism to him. So again, it's interesting to see that the point of the movie is that Batman kind of has to take power into his own hands, but that the police are a necessary instrument of his power, which, again, if you were like, what political philosophy does this fit?
He's always tied with Gordon, right? I mean, he's always using the instruments of government.
Well, yeah, but
right?
actually, this is an interesting point. Is Gordon always competent? Is Gordon always important, or is he an irrelevant joke? In the 60s movie and in the 80s movie, Gordon is an irrelevant joke. It is a choice to make Gordon like the active mastermind and like the co-leader of the political movement of heroism.
Dude, listen, Nolan's a libtard. We all know he's a libtard, right? He's like...
But no, it's so interesting to me that like Nolan and Snyder and so many other directors, like, yes, they're liberal, but if you actually are like, make a movie about heroism, they're like, one man, all the power, the police are on his side, they are good people.
Well, if he's cooperating with the functional government, then he's not one man, right?
No, that's the thing, yeah.
But the whole point of this movie is that checks and balances will fail.
Well, no, but he's saying that the institutions of government should be more effective, and Batman is a catalyst to make a more functional government. Yes. That's all he's saying.
What kind of catalyst is it, though? Because there's a political philosophy that argues that one man should be the catalyst to make it more effective.
He's saying that political institutions should be strengthened but not destroyed because he's scared of that. And that's what the Joker represents. Batman represents someone that's gonna come make the political institutions good and righteous.
But then why do all the threats come from the lower classes? And why are all the people in the higher classes always depicted as morally upright? Even Carmine Falcone and Sal Maroni, the mob bosses, in the comics, they live in big mansions in the lap of luxury. Nolan always depicts them in like dirty bars.
Because he's a rich asshole.
Well, yes, but he wasn't when he started making these movies. He was getting there. He was building up to it. I'm just saying.
Maroney has money, and Bruce Wayne is so obscenely wealthy.
Sal Maroni has money, but he doesn't live in a mansion.
I mean, they don't show that.
Like, if you read Batman Year One, Carmine Falcone and Sal Maroni are like living in houses that are just as nice as Bruce Wayne. Like, it's rich on rich combat. Nolan does make the visual decision. The Joker looks homeless. Maroni, his most opulent place he lives in is a nightclub.
Here we're getting to an interesting point, because I think one of the more interesting parts of this movie for me is that Nolan makes this movie as the libtard that he is, where it's just like, someone like the Joker is scary, but come on. The Joker, your coach was onto something, Jake. The Joker is right. So he accidentally made like the Joker actually have good, interesting points that are worth thinking about.
We're gonna get to this by the end of it, but
if you've made your hero George W. Bush, then anything the bad guy says against him, to a lot of people, just sounds kind of interesting.
Based.
I wouldn't go that far.
I knew exactly that this conversation was gonna go here, but we'll...
Again, this is what happens when you make a real adult movie out of
cartoons.
Batman and the Joker. Is they're like, did I accidentally endorse fascism? Anyway, continue.
Well, yeah, it'd be better off to not interrogate this and just show it to children for
Well, it's interesting when you put it that way, because I feel the appeal of something like Mask of the Phantasm is so completely different. Like, crime in Mask of the Phantasm isn't systemic. It's just personalities. And you're kind of just analyzing how personalities bounce off each other. But if you're treating crime as a real thing and you place it in the real world, then suddenly you're offering solutions.
And superhero cinema is kind of fascist by default, and it's hard to get out of that.
well, no, because here's where I differ on that, is if you look at most of the crimes in superhero cinema, they don't really map onto a real world definition of crime. Joker making the biggest whoopee cushion in the world and making the mayor of Gotham sit on it doesn't really say anything about real world crime. It's just a silly goof. It's like a Bugs Bunny. It's like saying Bugs Bunny is about gun violence. Yeah, but that's not the point. It's more of a metaphor, really. But if you made a Bugs Bunny movie where it's shot in IMAX on the streets of Chicago and Elmer Fudd is like always choosing who to shoot, then yes, you have tapped into a real world issue.
Well, yeah, then you'd be thinking about, what is it saying about hunting or whatever? Yeah. I think every superhero movie has their own way of dealing with this. Obviously, I think it's interesting that I think most of the superhero movies of the last decade plus, they get out of it by just not having them fight crime at all, right? They're in space doing Star Wars or whatever.
Yes, no, exactly. The element of crime fighting is completely gone. And I also think this is kind of interesting. I also wonder if this is part of why you see more of a rise in teen movies. Like, yes, the MCU, crossovers. We all love all our friends getting together. But you don't see as much, like, Tony Stark's great. But, like, the point of Avengers Endgame is not, he is the only one who is wise enough to lead us. Like, it's a collaborational effort. Whereas with the Nolan Batman trilogy, you do get more of a vibe that Bruce Wayne is the only one who really knows what he's doing.
No, it's the Joker.
Well, again, it's the Joker. That's why they're the same, because they're both the Nietzschean supermen who stand outside of society. I did read one book.
Okay, there we go. But I think it's pretty upfront, as we'll see as this film progresses, is you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Batman is put in more and more morally compromising positions the longer he keeps the cape on, right?
Yeah.
So are we at the fundraiser for...
Yes.
Is that what this is? Is it a fundraiser? Or
Yeah,
just
it's a
Bruce
fundraiser.
Wayne going, I love this man and I want to marry him?
It does give the vibe that he's just gonna pull his pants down and fillet in the middle of the room.
Well, no, and it's weird because he's always talking about Rachel is dating because he's so obsessed with Rachel. And he takes Rachel outside and he's like, dude, I won't have to be Batman. And she's like, dude, I'm dating someone else. And he's like, yeah, but...
Yeah, you promised me, right?
It is kind of funny that the two most iconic versions of Batman for some people, Nolan and Bruce Timm, are like total wife guys. Like they're frustrated wife guys who just can't wife hard enough.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, the dead wife meme for Nolan is real and strong.
Oh, of course. So they're at a fundraiser. The Joker shows up, and it just so happens that meanwhile, these guys got to the judge and Commissioner Loeb. And this is where you start to get to, this is like borderline supernatural, like how he's able to get to be everywhere at exactly the right time.
While we're talking about the attack on Loeb, which you get that cool smoke off the glass, the attack on the judge, isn't it Wirtz who, like, we see him in the camera as he drives away from the attack? I thought Wirtz pops up somewhere in this montage.
Words pops up into the penthouse because the Joker has a shotgun to his head.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's where he is. So Wirtz was supposed to be Harvey Bullock in one draft, but they were like, we can't make Harvey Bullock look like an evil man. So again, much like Eckhart, they made a new guy, an older guy named Wirtz, who's worse.
Hey.
So Batman, Bruce Wayne literally just grabs Harvey Dent, shoves him in a closet while he's talking to Rachel, which is so funny. That couple that's having sex is like, hey, a panic room for everyone. Bruce Wayne's like, nope.
Piece of evidence number one that Christopher Nolan has never had sex, where I'm just like, what the hell are they doing? Like, it's
a rowdy party, I guess.
We get our Stan Lee cameo of the movie in this scene. Did you see it?
What's his face?
Senator Patrick Leahy from Vermont.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the biggest piece of evidence that Christopher Nolan is a liberal, is he has a sitting United States Democratic senator in his scene going, we don't take threats from your kind, Mr. Joker.
We're not intimidated by thugs.
And you're like, motherfucker, you're from Bristol. Get off your fucking high horse.
Oh, Bristol, Vermont. I thought you meant, why'd you say that name? And again, this is the Joker showmanship on display. Like, this is classic Joker.
The effortless, like he's not just like switching in his bipolar or whatever you want to call it. It's effortless. Like, where is Harvey Dent? You know who he is? You know, like on a dime, right?
He empties the champagne and then drinks from the empty glass.
Yes, that's so great.
Well, compared to like other characters in the script, because I have a copy of the script and I was reading a little bit, and specifically with Heath Ledger's lines, it's like
there's a bunch of improv.
The lines are there, but he changes a lot of the words, and then they just kind of let him do his thing. And it's perfectly showcased here, where they're just like, all right, we're just going to keep the camera on him. Just go around and do shit. Do creepy shit.
But they don't, linger on it in the edit. So, it's you're not just like, oh, no, this is like improv hour. And I guess worth also noting, he tells the second story. It's worth noting that when he tells these stories, he really gets into it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's clearly fake, but he's selling it so hard.
Like, it's real, yeah. He's crying about his fake wife he made.
Yeah, that he made up like in the moment,
at
basically.
The spot, yeah.
And he's got a knife in his shoe, like what's her face from Russia with Love?
Rosa Klebb.
Rosa Klebb.
Fraulein, what's her name from Austin
Frau
Powers?
Barbissina.
Yeah.
Frau Barbissina. So he has a knife just like Frau Barbissina.
Just like Frau Barbissina.
And then Batman shows up again in a brightly lit room.
Yep.
And he's like, let her go. And Joker's like,
poor choice of words.
It's always a gag.
And Batman jumps after her, much like how he jumped after Henri Ducard, Ra's al Ghul, in the beginning flashbacks on the Snowy Mountain in Batman Begins. And it works. He slows her fall and they land on a car. Meanwhile, we just assume Joker just kind of left.
There was a deleted scene where Joker gets into a car and they shot it, and there's a still of it where Joker feels his head and there's like blood, and then he just tells the driver to fuck off. But Nolan is not even concerned at this point, like where it's like the Joker's gone, doesn't matter, next scene.
He's Magic Man. He went poof. the next we get the philosophy, we get the Joker's thing, but the Joker doesn't tell us it. Alfred tells us it.
But is that what it is? We don't know. Is he like, he is trying to burn the world, but does he just want to burn it, or does he want to rebuild it with something better? We don't know. That's what's so frightening.
Well, I guess that's true. The Joker doesn't give an indication of that, but yeah.
I don't think that the Joker particularly cares about a new world, but...
Yeah, me neither.
I've been kidnapped by the Joker. He doesn't like it when I get political on the podcast.
Oh, no.
He heard you talking about Russia and he kidnapped you.
Well, hopefully you can get out of it and you won't accidentally be shot by a SWAT team and Batman can save you.
How oddly specific. You know, this reminds me of my friend that I talked about back in the License to Kill.
Oh, God.
Okay, we're moving on.
Yeah, we're moving on.
Well, the thing that I find weird about this scene is that Alfred just casually goes like, I was sent in Burma to go kill a bandit.
He's like, yeah, by the way, I was a mercenary.
He gives a 5-minute speech for like, he's fucking with you, dude. Basically, like, how do we feel about all the speeches? Because I love them.
No, I love them too.
Oh, yeah. Again, it's movie shit. Like, It's like you think that he's up to something, he's kind of not. Like,
Yeah.
On one hand, I think it's a very good metaphor. I like the idea of robbing the Joker of political agency, but it should be noted, Christopher Nolan is robbing Burmese Robin Hood figures and other insurgents of their political agency against imperialism. Because once again, we are meant to side with the patrician figure who is keeping society in place. In Nolan movies, society comes from the top down. You can destroy society by taking out great men, because Nolan is clearly a subscriber to the great man theory of history.
My God, Base Troy is not something I had on my bingo card for tonight.
And the problem is that then this makes people think Batman is more about maintaining the power structure, and really it's about making sure kids don't get shot in the face, which is something I think we can all get on board with.
okay, so then the next clue is he's going to go after the mayor.
Mayor Guyliner.
I'll be honest, I think, I mean, I love Hamilton Hill. This might be my favorite mayor of Gotham, because he just is so prissy. Like, he just is like so snippy at everyone, and I love it.
Right, and he's always very nervous.
Yeah. And he's like, what are you doing?
Oh, you went after the mob? Now everyone's coming after you. Ha 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 ha.
Is it appropriate to ask how the fuck the Joker managed to, like, just hide the police?
Magic. That's the thing. He looks just as fucked up as Jack Nicholson in the museum.
He looks like the Joker.
But he can just walk in, and it's nightmare logic of, like, the second you see him, it's already too late, right?
It's the logic of when the camera sees him, then that's when the Joker strikes. Exactly.
When the edit ends the scene, that's just when that day ends. Nothing happens
But
after
wait,
that.
okay, question. What is the joke? What did he do here? So he killed a bunch of people in a room, shot a bullet with a fingerprint into the wall, took that fingerprint belongs to a guy who lived in another apartment where he had more people, and he knew that Batman would get there and set off a gun that would attract the fire of the snipers, so no one would notice the mental patients disguised as police officers firing right at the mayor. Like, was that the plan?
Yeah, so this is where we get to your point, Jake, that you made off mic, is that many of the plot mechanics of this film have more in common with Adam West Batman.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say, because this whole section of the movie it's just like Batman 66 when we were talking about it, and it's funny watching them so close together, because a lot of Batman 1966 is Adam West doing a plan to foil the villain's plan, and the villain's counteracting that with an even more ludicrous plan. But Batman has another plan to foil that ludicrous plan.
Again, that's what Batman is actually about, not fascism. It's about one-upping each other with ludicrous plans.
With whoopee cushions.
That's the bizarre thing in this movie, is that it completely follows that to a T, where it's just like, oh, the Joker planted all this stuff. Well, Batman had a way to reconfigure a shattered bullet, but the Joker wanted that. So now he's going to shoot the mayor. But alas, Gordon has a plan to fake his own death so that they can put the blame on Harvey Dent and so that they can capture the Joker. But the Joker knew that that was going to happen, so he planted a guy with a bomb in his stomach to escape from prison. So it is operating on that same logic, except everything is Michael Mann.
So then he finds the character played by David Dastmalchian.
Polka Dot Man.
Yeah.
At the time, I don't know if what he'd been in before
And
this.
he was an extra in this.
Yeah, no, like, I just referred to him as the paranoid schizophrenic from The Dark Knight, because that's how Batman describes him.
He's a paranoid schizophrenic. He's a paranoid schizophrenic.
Kind of mind the Joker attracts.
We haven't even talked about how Batman's voice just gets insane in this one. Like,
yeah, this is where Bale kind of starts to lose the thread.
like he sounds relatively normal in Batman Begins, and in this he just sounds like like how people imitate him, you know?
So Harvey finds the paranoid schizophrenic, and at the same time, Batman's going after Maroni, and so you get these two juxtaposed torture scenes.
Yeah, we have Batman throwing Maroni off of a roof.
Which bothers me, because we now have two scenes in a row where characters fall a certain distance and don't die. Almost like the movie is saying, if you fall a certain distance, you don't die, which will be contradicted in the ending.
No, that's movie shit. That doesn't bother me.
A certain distance. I mean, I think there is a certain distance where you won't die, but anyway.
Anyway, so we get Harvey Dent torturing the paranoid schizophrenic, and Batman's like, what the hell are you doing? You're gonna, if people see you with this dark side, then everything you've worked for will be for nothing because they'll release the police.
He's not Mark Wahlberg. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
Because he's basing everything off of a coin flip. You later find out that the coin is double-sided, and he constantly says, I make my own luck. So he has no intention of actually killing David Dastmalchian here, but we're seeing this side of Harvey Dent that could be darker, but he's still in control.
It's almost like a what do you call it when there are like symbols in a narrative? Something ism. I can't think of it now.
Visual motif, allegory. It's not like in the animated series where Richard Mole's Two-Face. Like, a lot of people see Two-Face as suffering from a mental illness. In The Dark Knight, he just is the soul of Gotham. He's just constantly at war with wanting to go darker or wanting to go, like, better. He's just kind of a normal guy being torn apart in the struggle, which I think is a pretty bold choice. In fact, in some ways, I almost find Aaron Eckhart's performance the most impressive one in the movie.
That's interesting.
No, I do think he's really good in this.
I remember I ran into him literally like the week the movie came out. I ran into him on the street and I told him I thought that Heath Ledger was incredible in the movie.
God damn
and he
it.
just walked away.
Man.
I've never had a single nice interaction with a celebrity.
It always just ends with them leaving sad.
Yeah.
And this is around when they're like, you should turn yourself in.
But what would you have me do, Alfred? Endure. How'd you get that bandit? We burned the whole forest down. Jesus Christ. Oh.
You see, Master, when I came into your room and you were wanking it for the first time, I saw you undo. You must undo now. You cannot finish.
You must continue
quickly.
masturbating with me here.
You must continue masturbating with me here. You know, your grandfather owned the Underground Railroad.
Because now, according to Mike Stucklausa, things are worse than ever.
Yeah.
That's right. So this is, in my opinion, when the movie kicks things up a notch, because he's like, take the Batman into custody. I'm the Batman. What? Bruce Wayne is ready to go in, right?
Yeah.
He is ready to surrender.
Which Rachel is against, even though she's not big on Batman.
Yes. Well, Alfred's not big on Batman either, but he's like, you can't give in to the Joker, right?
I do love the little back and forth where they're in the elevator and he's like, they're going to send me to jail too, Master Bruce. And he's like, oh, no, I'll tell them it's all your idea.
Good bits, even in the like relatively dark stuff. Like the movie has a very well managed tone. I mean, even later when it gets pretty dark. There's still levity. And then we get
the coolest fucking car scene like ever.
It's pretty good.
I don't even know what to say about it. I don't want to go.
This scene is like, if Fury Road was interesting, like it would be this scene.
If Fury Road had the Joker in it, I guess.
If Troy really is like, if Fury Road was good, it would be
No.
Just dropping a hot take right in the middle of this.
Don't misquote me. Fury Road is good. This scene is great. This scene is like practical effect, flipping it, Joker's weaving in and out, Batman jumps out of the Batmobile and onto a cool ass bat pod.
I mean, the part that blows my fucking mind is when he shoots the fucking like doors, the glass doors, and he like runs through them, and he's like going through the mall.
Well, that just is from the Blues Brothers.
I know, I love the Blues Brothers.
Well, and the whole time that we're doing this, there's like a whole like subplot happening here with the guy in the passenger seat of the armored vehicle and a masked man. Who could this be? But it's like done so matter-of-factly.
I do want to point out that Nolan also remembers it's a kid's movie for exactly one beat where the kids are in the car going,
yes.
Pew, 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 and then the cars all blow up and they're like, whoa.
No, and also when the Joker is shooting at the truck with a gun, then he gets a bigger gun and then a bazooka. That's a great gag.
I made a note that I'm like, if we're thinking about this from the Joker's point of view, when Harvey turns himself in, the Joker basically admits he's like, he never really was fooled by that, but you get the sense of like the game is afoot, right? Like if Batman had surrendered, then the game would be over, right? Throughout this scene, he is just having a ball, right? The Joker is on cloud 9 with everything that happens. And even I made a note, I mean, it's very Mark Hamill-esque when he snaps his fingers, but when the Batmobile just completely fucks up the giant garbage truck, which is an awesome miniature, by the way, and the one Heath Ledger like,
The whole thing about this scene is just like, I want the game to keep going, and I want the game to either end with Batman killing me, but if not, the game continues.
Hit me.
Well, this level of the game ends with the coolest shit ever, which is the truck flip, which is still to this day just insane. Like, that they did that.
Iconic, insane.
You see the air tank that propels the truck up in the air, but who gives a shit?
Yeah,
Yeah, whatever. Nobody cares.
The jet stream.
Yeah, supposedly they shot it from like
every angle, and then they just use one. No, it's the same with like when the hospital blows up, they put cameras everywhere, and Nolan's like, wait a minute, it's actually better if I just let it play out. And it's how like Nolan discovered how to do action.
Yeah, and I guess we didn't know it also, but like because they're using IMAX, which not for that many scenes, but he's very conscious of like this is going to be shown in IMAX. I think the aggressive shaky cam in Batman Begins, it was like, well, we cannot do that.
Well, they can't do it with an IMAX. Like, it's impossible. Like,
but also, if it's on a giant screen,
audiences will be vomiting in their seats, you know.
Yeah.
We don't want a Hobbit situation which there's like a river of puke and cum just like coming down the aisle.
That or Man of Steel.
Yes.
Wait, what did you watch?
I don't know why I said cum. That was just for me.
Oh, okay. So the scene builds up, and I think, yeah, again, one of the most indicative images of this movie is the Joker standing there on the street saying, hit me, and it's just normal, everyday Chicago, and there's freaks in the middle, and just the tension of that, you know, is, like, palpable, and Batman is not going to do it, and he's, like, screaming and, like, hit me! He wants to so bad, you know, but he can't. He actually crashes and like kind of injures himself because it's down that close. And also, again, based alpha Joker, he mouths fuck. It seems like he probably said fuck and they just took it out of the soundtrack, right?
Also, kudos to Nolan for writing out the Batmobile and never like getting it back.
Yeah, that wasn't like a particularly cool Batmobile, so it was good to see him go.
I actually, as a kid, I hated it. I'm like, it looks so generic.
It's a Jeep. It's like my mom's car. It's literally, my mom's not Batman. My mom's the Penguin. Everyone knows that. One of my favorite Joker moments is here, which is when he's about to take Batman's mask off and just Can you please give me a minute?
Could you please just give me a minute?
Psych, Gordon's not dead. And then they put Harvey in a different car. But psych, that's part of the plan too.
They put Harvey in a car, then they put Rachel in a car, and then they go, congrats, Commissioner Gordon. And you're all like, I know what that is. We're still doing the origin story, technically.
Well, yeah, I was like, he was already. Oh no, I guess he
No, he
was.
was lieutenant.
Yeah,
the commissioner died. There was a whole funeral. They played Balmoral.
There are so many things in this movie that I only realized on my recent watches. Like, only like last year, I realized the guy with the weird eyeliner was supposed to be the mayor.
Question for the room. How did Gordon fake his death? Like, did he know that someone was going to try to shoot the mayor?
I'll tell you why, because Christopher Nolan wrote in his machine that he comes back to life, and this movie follows that logic of like...
Yeah, it's Dream.
Yeah, it's dream logic.
You can use It's a Movie as an excuse for everything.
Well, we did use it for everything on Batman 89.
It's quintessentially Batman 66, or just like Batman shit in general. It's just like, I foiled you. Aha, I swallowed a pill. You know?
The Nolan magic trick is like, this is ludicrous, but it takes us literally years to be like, wait a minute, you know?
Right.
Yes. I kind of love that they don't explain it, that they're just like, you died, and he's just like, no. That's...
So he's in custody, and they're interrogating him, the Joker.
Well, the mayor sends Commissioner Gordon home, and he goes back to his family. And then you don't even see like a scene between like when he's at home with his kid.
Cut to the Joker, and it's like, oh, he's back. Actually, it's a time jump. Actually, Harvey and Rachel have disappeared.
Yeah, where's Harvey and Rachel? They never made it home. I'm like, wait, what?
But then we're doing the good cop, bad cop routine, which is a great, obviously an iconic scene that is only slightly ripped off from Jerry Maguire. So interesting because when we see the Joker, it's like one key point light. You have the Joker sitting at the desk, and Gordon, it's in darkness. And then Batman's hiding in the darkness, but in order for him to operate, they turn the lights on. Because again, this Batman operates in the light, and everything is exposed with him as like this kind of out of place dark figure.
I think it is a statement that like the most important scene where they face off is in this tiny white interrogation room.
Yeah.
It's the first time they've seen each other face to face properly, and it's so great, this thing that's been memed to death, but it's still great that like, you cannot hurt the Joker, because you hurt him, he laughs, he'll just make a quip. He wants you to do that because he wants you to break your one rule or something like that. I'm not quite sure.
Yes, and then he convinces Batman that Harvey and Rachel have been kidnapped, and he gives him Rachel's location?
Well, he gives them both addresses. Bruce thinks he's going after Rachel, but he gave them to them in reverse.
Yes. Well, the beta thing that Joker does here that sets Batman off.
Watch your next words carefully, Jake.
No, but right here he's like getting under Batman's skin because the main thing is Rachel. For some reason, Rachel really pisses off Batman. And
I almost thought you were him the way you went after her. But no, he's laying the groundwork here. Now, this is interesting, the dichotomy he makes. And this is, again, obviously real life got in the way, but the movie kind of makes the interesting case that Rachel belongs with Harvey. Batman belongs with the Joker.
Yes.
Like the Joker's like, you complete me.
Yeah, the Joker's making the case like, you're not like them. We're special. We're freaks. Join me.
Which is such a great beat in Batman stories. I always love the evolution when Batman goes from fighting organized crime to basically himself. Like, okay, you fixed one problem, but all your future problems are just
well, yeah,
you.
It's like in our previous lives, I don't know if you guys remember, but we used to have another podcast where we talked about James Bond. And towards the end there were so many villains that tried to do this Joker shit of just like...
all villains did this.
We're the same, you and I.
Apart from that, we are the same.
The two survivors. This is what you made us.
I could be speaking to my own reflection.
We're not so different, you and I.
And we were always like, no. You know,
no,
like,
you're not.
Not everyone gets to be the Joker. But you know who gets to be the Joker? The Joker. It works here.
But it's interesting how, again, 89 Batman did this too, but it literally was, I would say, literal. I guess if that's what we're using, like very obvious connection. You made me, I made you, shove, shove. Now we're both freaks. With this one, it really is like, we talk about society in a way that like other people don't.
When the chips are down, they'll eat each other. I can't do the fucking boys. I'm too old.
Oh my God.
You gotta remember, Heath Ledger was a spry young 27-year-old. I'm a decrepit 28-year-old. I can't do it anymore. I also love that Gordon he's literally seeing Batman like beat the shit out of this guy. He's just like, he's under control. I'm like, how? What about the situation is under control?
Again, everything's getting strained, pushed to its limit. And again, just basically magic that the guy with the bomb in his stomach is right there. So that as soon as Batman leaves, the Joker's like, phone call, please. And he's free.
Right. Well, no, but it's such a great like build up. Because again, you have Stevens, who is kind of like another Ersatz Bullock. He's like, I just want my one phone call. And then immediately the Joker has him like taken down. And he's like, again, it's a very funny scene.
Okay, I got another quick non sequitur story. When I saw this for the first time, like I said, I was with my dad. The guy with the phone on his belly, I don't know why my dad turns over to me and he goes like, I bet that's gonna be the Penguin. And then he blows up.
It's funny because people complain about movies being all references now, but even before they were all references, people were all like, I bet that's a reference.
Yeah.
Mr. Reeves? Riddler.
I still remember that fondly to this very day.
There is a Catwoman reference in this movie when Lucius Fox is like, this new suit will protect against cats.
Should do fine against cats.
Oh yeah, when Lucius Fox wears the cat outfit and drinks out of milk out of a bowl.
Yeah, and he gets Batman all hot and bothered.
A little on the nose, no, and not really relevant to anything.
Well, Nolan's a kind of a literal filmmaker. I'm sorry.
But they're too late. Oh my God.
The Joker switches the addresses, so Batman gets Harvey.
And not Rachel. Only Gordon gets Rachel, but because he is lower middle class, Gordon fails in his mission, while the rich and wealthy Batman succeeds in getting most of Harvey Dent's.
Well, yeah, mixed results.
Yeah.
Whoops.
The scene is so beautiful. I mean, I know the Rachel Dawes character is kind of controversial, how she basically just turns Batman into a simp, and that's his whole motivation in all these movies. But while not really doing anything besides just jump between two men. But I love the scene where her and Harvey say goodbye. Like, it's so heartbreaking.
I mean, Maggie's a really good actress, and she's really giving it all. She's better than the previous Rachel.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking to think that Katie Holmes was like the biggest star in Batman because like she was undergirding it. What happens to Harvey is so heartbreaking here.
I just remember also it was like when Rachel dies, it was like shocking the first time you watch it. Like you're like, the love interest is not supposed to die is fucking like insane.
And it's like a jump scare because you're just like,
it's like there's still an hour left.
I'll say this. I knew when I was 14 years old that Rachel was going to die. You know why? Because she's not in the comics.
Anyway, next I was going to bring up, the Two-Face effect, because that's what we next get, is he will not receive skin grafts and was refused all medication, nothing to blunt the pain. But much like everything else is going on in this movie, it's like it walks a good line where it's not realistic at all, but it's close enough to not take you out of the movie, but comic booky enough that he turns his face and you're just like, oh my God, it's shocking.
Exactly. It's the sweet spot of like realistic and goofy.
Yeah. After watching Tommy Lee Jones with his stupid look, like seeing the actual Two-Face, because they kept it so well hidden for like the whole marketing period, actually seeing it, I was like, oh my God, that's horrifying.
No, I was like, I mean, that's a skeleton, that's burnt skin. I buy it.
Well, I remember when the first time I saw the Harvey Dent as Two-Face, I think an image actually leaked. And I'm like, oh my God, that is fucking horrifying and weird. And I'm like, is this actually from the movie? And I was kind of doubting it. And then the movie happens and I'm like, nope, that's exactly what he looks like.
Well, no, I fucking hate, there's a certain fellow podcaster that I will not name that thinks that a lot of movies suck and he's just like, The Dark Knight is actually not a perfect movie because what's up with Harvey Dent? He would be in a lot of pain and he wouldn't being able to form consonants with his mouth. And I'm just like what an insane way to look at movies. You know what I mean?
Literally, the Joker magically broke out of prison and had like 5 plans in development, and also one of the characters faked his own death for a gotcha moment. We're in for the craziness. We're in for the mayhem at this point.
I believe the original makeup was even more realistic, and test audiences like revolted, so they had to tone it down.
Yeah, people don't actually want to see a burn victim on your comic book movie, you know?
Especially as like the bad guy. But again, I want to point out Harvey Two-Face is his nickname he gets from being in Internal Affairs. Because what's the worst thing you could do in Nolan's Gotham City? Try to hold the police accountable for their actions.
Because he was a snitch.
It does seem that when he's like, you remember what you used to call me in school? And Gary Oldman's like, I don't want to say it. It seems like it's a slur, right? It feels like he's going to call him something really bad.
Well, yeah, he's known as a social climber, and he was already a politician before he was a politician, right?
Did you read the backstory for this version of Two-Face? I forget if it was in the script or in the novelization. But apparently in this version, Harvey's dad is a cop who like beat his mom. And one day when Harvey was out at like law school, he killed his mom and the police like covered it up. So this is why he went into Internal Affairs or something, was to like root out corrupt policemen.
Interesting.
I didn't know that until today. Kind of dark, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, who came up with that? Goyer?
I don't know. That feels more like a Nolan thing, if I'm being honest, because there's a dead wife.
Oh yeah, but so the Russian Chechen has the like big pile of money, and Joker's like, I'm the Joker, I hate money, and burns it.
With
and,
Mr. Lau on top.
Yeah, and we're just like, this Joker is so scary and cool. He's my dad, and I just love him. I love him.
Well, and then
much.
also at the same time, Coleman Reese, the smarmy accountant lawyer for Wayne Enterprises, who tried to blackmail Lucius Fox because he knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Because Coleman Reese is doing this to become the hero Gotham deserves, so he like widely marketed that he was going to do this.
Okay, in the script, there's a little bit more characterization for Coleman Reese. There's a whole chunk of dialogue that's missing in the scene where he blackmails, where he says, I looked up to Batman, my kids look up to Batman, they think he's badass, and I was kind of disappointed that he was just a bored rich guy who sleeps during meetings, and he resents Batman for that. And then he also is going to tell the secret so, the Joker stops killing people. And so you finally get like that moment at the end where Reese looks at Bruce Wayne after he crashes the Lamborghini to save his life, and he just like gives him the nod. Like,
wasn't he gonna be the Riddler, or is that just like a rumor?
No, that was your dad.
Okay, yeah. He was like, I bet he's the Riddler, and then he blows up.
Yeah.
So the Joker is in the hospital, and he's a nurse.
Yes.
Yes, he's wearing an I Love Lucy nurse design.
He's Bugs Bunnying it.
And this is when Two-Face like doesn't recognize him until he takes the
which
mask
is great.
down and goes, hi.
Hi.
What was her name again? Rachel!
And he just goes like this with his hands. It's amazing. A 10 out of 10 scene.
Yeah.
Well, and this is also one of the other big Joker scenes, because all the good lines of, I'm a dog chasing cars, I didn't know what to do if I caught one, but this scene right here, Paul and I off mic were talking about this. This whole scene is a manipulation of Harvey Dent.
He's lying, yeah.
He's lying, sort of.
It's funny because this is the scene where I think most of the maybe slightly misguided Joker simps, they take from this scene. But this is the scene where he's bullshitting the most because he's trying to create Two-Face, trying to complete the job.
Yes, but there is truth behind his bullshitting.
Here's the thing that I thought where he was telling the truth, or that gives insight into what motivates the Joker.
Which is that he fought in Iraq.
No, it's that he refers to Batman, Gordon, Harvey as the schemers who bend the law and everything to make sure that peace is ensured.
They're schemers. Schemers trying to control their little worlds.
And he comes at it going like, that is complete bullshit. there's no point in you doing that because people are inherently evil, and also you're cheating if you're bending the rules.
Which doesn't make any sense if I'm being honest.
No, it makes perfect sense because this is really when we get like, he hates society. He hates the structure of society. He hates the nature of society because society is all about rules and we must dispel society by...
It's also about hierarchy. Like, he gets mad that people are more upset about the mayor almost getting killed than a convoy of soldiers getting blown up.
But I think the element of truth is that he doesn't like the schemers, not knowing.
Yeah, we were getting to this point is that, like, as honest as he's being is also that much more hypocritical, if that makes sense, because he seems to sort of think he's like, everybody's got a big plan except for me. I don't have a plan. It's like, of course you do. You know, you have a very specific agenda.
But I think he knows that.
Well, it's interesting because, and well, here you go. I think for me, the debate has to be, does the Joker believe his own bullshit? Because many misguided men of our generation believe the bullshit and they're like the element of truth. But if you really think about it, it's just a man dodging responsibility for blowing up Harvey Dent and his girlfriend. Like, that's all the scene is. He's just trying to break Harvey Dent to get at his one true guy, which is Batman.
To that point is interesting because it is kind of a pair with the interrogation room scene. And it's almost was like his pitch to Batman of like, we're a match. You should be like me. You should join me. And now that he's improvising somewhat, but we get to this scene where he is making the pitch to Harvey, and it's almost the same thing where, I mean, he is genuinely giving Harvey the gun and the coin.
Yeah.
Like in the same way he would with Batman, where it's like, look, if I die right now and I can corrupt Harvey, it's a good consolation prize if I can't get Batman, right?
Yeah. Well, I actually, the philosopher Slavoj Žižek analyzes the Joker.
Oh, now you're talking.
He says, and I am quoting, he says the problem with the Joker is that he is not anti-society per se, is that he is what the communist philosophers would call an adventurist, which is in modern terms would be called a terrorist, which is a man who tries to dismantle society but with no formal organization, basically like a ragtag adventure, which usually just leads to harder reactionary movement, which here we see with Batman using the Patriot Act. Right?
Yeah.
So
correct.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
Okay, well, I think this does get to your point. Yeah, that's the Joker's scheme is you're going to break your one rule is like, it's either going to be anarchy or it's going to be fascism. Yeah. And either way I win, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. The whole point here is that he doesn't see himself as a schemer because he is like a terrorist adventurous where his cause is righteous, but his methods are chaotic, which is...
His cause is very righteous.
Well, yeah, he's a Joker, man. Come on.
Not to be the centrist lib in the room.
Too late.
But again, this kind of goes into the whole question of, does the Joker win in The Dark Knight? Because as you kind of pointed out, Paul, the Joker is basically saying that no matter what you do, he wins. So I guess it's up to our heroes and the audience to try to decide if that's even a valid thing to worry about whatever the Joker is saying, because he's just bullshitting to make himself look like the smartest guy in the room. You don't need to listen to him.
Okay, so
the hospital blows up.
Which is incredible. I had no idea. I had to ask my dad, how did they do that? And my dad said, they blew up a building. I was like, I did not know that you could do that in like for a movie.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch, and like it's still just one of those things. I mean, I guess it's kind of like something like Fury Road, where like there are action set pieces that may not in reality have been the most complicated action set pieces, but the way they're presented, it's like this is the biggest thing you could imagine, and it's so like one of a kind. Even though it's like there have been buildings that have blown up before, but like it feels different. It hits different. Somewhere in here, this is when Batman is like, Lucius, I need to find this man. Let me show you what I've been working on.
I call it...
Spying on everyone.
I call it the NSA.
I call it an excuse to give myself comics-accurate white eyes years before Deadpool and Wolverine ever comes out.
That too.
When I was 14, I was flipping out. I'm like, wow, this is a good metaphor for like the Patriot. Whoa, he has the white eyes. He has the white eyes from the
that just took
comic
it up
book.
to a whole nother level.
That's also what I said when Bush got reelected. Those exact same words.
He has the white eyes.
Yeah.
As Harvey Dent begins his Two-Face track down all the cops that messed with him, including not Harvey Bullock and not Renee Montoya.
And also Maroney.
And Maroney, which is a great death scene.
And a great seatbelt PSA.
Well, the Joker has announced that he's going to keep killing people.
And the biggest trolley problem of all.
Yes. My philosophy professor actually used this scene as an example for like consequentialism or some bullshit.
Okay.
It's a great scene.
Yeah, the Joker threatens to kill a bunch more people, but they can't leave through the tunnels, so they gotta leave through ferries, which leads into this. This movie has gone from Batman 66, and we are now in a Star Trek / Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah. This philosophy class, there was one time where a guy legitimately like raised his hand and asked the professor, "Is your favorite philosopher the Joker?"
And he sits there in like a purple suit and like
Again, and with a painted face, he said, "What makes you say that?"
So what's going on here? The ferries are out on the water, and there's a ferry full of prisoners who have all done really bad stuff. Christopher Nolan doesn't care about the exact crime, but they're the lowest of the low. They've all been fairly convicted through the justice system.
Well, they're part of Maroney's operation.
And on the other boat, we have the bourgeois middle class with their middle class values pitted against the lower class.
Yes, and who's the more bloodthirsty one? The middle class businessman.
Yes, because that's who the fastest truly fears. Anyway,
you know that Christopher Nolan was this close from writing, and then the criminals blow up, and at the end, you know.
Well, no, so it's funny. I love this. This was my favorite scene in the movie as a kid.
Oh, it was great
because I was very much like Batman has a rule: it's you don't kill anyone. And in this part, when Tiny Lister, who I worked with, by the way, I interned at his manager's company in LA, and I would talk to him, and he would tell me how he was going to convince Nicolas Cage to make another Ghost Rider, which he has not.
What does this have to do with the Dark Knight?
Tiny Lister is the guy on the prison boat who throws the detonator into the sea. And I knew him, and he would call me to make an appointment, and I'd be like, who is this? And he'd be like, Tiny Lister, your boss's only client. And I'd be like, oh, yeah. All right, we'll pencil you in.
I knew him, Horatio. He threw the detonator into the sea.
R.I.P. Tiny, great guy. Very.
He was also in Austin Powers Goldmember briefly.
He's also in Zootopia.
Oh.
No, but I love that, you know, we just had the big fucking, like, hospital explosion. And we've just had so much, like, really high octane action that is just like, what could the climax of this movie that has just felt like a 2.5 hour long climax be? And I love that it's this little like brain teaser posed by the Joker that will also, the result of it will also determine if Gotham has lost its soul or not. And this is where Batman wins, which is where he proves the Joker that there is still light in the citizens of Gotham.
My favorite part of the movie is when the middle-class bald guy, who's not Richard Jenkins, goes through the detonator, then he puts it back because ultimately he realizes it's wrong.
Yeah, of course there's the Karen there that's just like, just kill them.
Kill them all! Meanwhile, Commissioner Gordon is going to shoot a bunch of hostages in Joker masks. But Batman, using the power of invasive Patriot Act technology that looks just like the comic book accurate Batman eyes, he has determined that the clowns are hostages and the doctors are clowns.
Yes, he simultaneously pulls surveillance overreach in order to combat Gordon's other government, you know.
Like, that Gordon is so insane about saving Harvey Dent, he's going to shoot everyone in the skyscraper. We have to save Dent! I have to save Dent!
I have to save Dent!
What a great line reading.
He's about to shoot Batman.
Batman using the power, and again, I'll admit it, I mean, I joke about this movie's political leanings, but it is kind of messy, because the climax on his way to beat up the Joker, Batman is basically beating up the police officers who are on the same side as him and just like beating them up, throwing them off ledges so that they don't kill the innocent hostages.
Well, that's the cool part of the movie.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And like Morgan Freeman's like, I don't approve of the Patriot Act, but God, if I don't love it.
It does make me sad when he kills the dogs. I don't like that.
Oh no, I hate that too. The dogs didn't know what they were doing. He could have trained them.
Yeah, it's hilarious that is the final.
That's the climax. It's against dogs.
The final boss level is like, I've got 3 dogs.
He's been talking about how much he hates dogs the entire movie, and now he finally gets to kill someone.
That's funny because it's almost like you could get like a shot of like the dogs like falling.
Yeah.
Like as the cops are saving the hostages, you just see a dog going, "Arr!"
There's one great like half-second shot of like him just throwing a dog, just like their body just flying.
So violent, and you can tell he's enjoying it.
It would have been cool if he took one of those dogs home and he adopted it, and they're like, you should go by your real name, dog, Ace the Bat Hound. But I guess this movie didn't want to get nominated for Best Picture. Anyway.
He's like, I got these stars.
Yeah, and Batman's like, shut the fuck up.
He's like, just shut up, man.
Just shut up.
Wait, this is where Batman refutes Batman 89, because the Joker falls just like Jack Nicholson, but Batman catches him.
Yes. So, and Joker's like, you truly are incorruptible, aren't you, you little weenie? We're going to do this forever. And he's like, no, we're not.
Which, again, as a kid wanting the comic accurate Batman and Joker, this is a very comic accurate sentiment. I'm like, oh boy, they're going to set this up so these two were like, fighting forever, and then one of them died and the other one quit.
Yeah.
But in this moment, Batman is fully vindicated, right?
Yeah.
Like his plan works. Joker's like, but I've got an ace in the hole. Not Ace the Bat Hound.
Damn it!
He's like, Harvey Dent is bad now, and Batman's like, I don't believe you. And then he's like, oh, good God.
Yeah, so we come to this wonderful climax.
I think it's a dick move for Jim Gordon to just flat out admit that he likes his son more than his daughter.
Well, it's funny because it's so subtle how he does it. He's like moving the gun, and it's like, it's okay, Barbara. It's okay, honey. It's ooh.
Well, it's funny that the source of Dent's animosity, besides Rachel, and why he's really targeting Gordon is because he wasn't cop enough to not work with corrupt cops, basically. Because the whole thing has been building like, I don't like how you have corrupt cops in the MCU. And this is like, you're such an idiot, Gordon, because you work with corrupt cops, and now my fiance is dead, you fucker.
Right. He's mad at Gordon for his negligence.
Here's the thing I just noticed on this watch. Yorgos Lanthimos kind of stole the idea for killing of a sacred deer from this scene.
What, pointing a gun at kids?
No, Colin Farrell is Commissioner Gordon. He couldn't save Barry Keogh's loved one because of his negligence, because he's bad at his job. So now he has to choose which of his family is going to get shot.
I mean, this is just one of those like full operatic scenes. It just ties everything together. He's like, all right, we're all going to flip the coin. Batman shot. Boom. Out of frame. You're like, oh my God.
Oh no. And he's so unceremoniously shot. It's just like, and then he just slumps.
Well, the tradition of Batman getting unceremoniously shot has been well and alive since the 80s. Like,
I kind of feel like here it's even more weird because there's still an operatic nature of when he gets shot in Batman 89. Here it's just like,
it's just another like gut punch cut moment, you know.
And then Batman finally, he wakes up and he breaks his one rule. He murders the fuck out of the guy.
Yeah.
Here's the controversial moment. I don't know if there's a scene in cinema history I've argued about as much as Batman killing Harvey Dent. Mostly because when I first saw it in the movie theater, I thought Harvey Dent was still alive because they had done 2 scenes where people survive large falls in this movie. So I thought, by the rules of the movie, he's just sleeping.
But this guy's skull is exposed.
The car flip, he was fine.
Yeah, because he was wearing a seatbelt. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt here.
Damn it! This Joker logic.
well, and also in the same scene, Batman falls the same height.
Yes.
But he's wearing an armor.
I have 2 issues. 1, I'm going to go from a logic standpoint. This is accidental manslaughter. He is knocking a man off a building to get a kid. Him and the kid go over. If Batman was going over with Harvey and the kid, he didn't know where anyone was going to fall except he was going to get the kid to safety. I don't think this counts as him truly breaking his one rule. This is not cold-blooded murder, which is what I think the Joker wants him to do. Second, from a meta standpoint, and again, this kind of ties into the Man of Steel debate. If you are arguing that this guy is the moral arbiter of the universe, which I would argue was the original point of the Dark Knight's ending, not the Dark Knight Rises. We can talk about how that might have changed over time. But if you would argue that Batman is the arbiter of the moral universe of the Dark Knight, him killing Two-Face takes a little bit of the punch out of the ending. Because the whole point of the ending is Batman going, I killed those people, and Commissioner Gordon going, no, you didn't, except Batman just killed someone. So why are you in shock that Batman would claim to kill people if he just killed somebody? The movie doesn't grapple with this at all. And even in the sequel, it's more mad about the cover-up than Batman breaking his one rule. That is never dwelt upon in this movie or in the sequel.
Well, I think that in some ways Batman wins because he shows the Joker that there's good in Gotham, but in other ways the Joker maybe does win because he corrupted Harvey Dent and he made Batman kill someone, and this is where the whole noble lie element comes into play that has to do a lot with the whole Bush era that we're living in at the moment.
The great lie of fascism, some might call it.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
It's going back to Batman 66 as well. Because as we learned in that movie, where Batman doesn't make a mistake. He just tells people that things have worked out anyway. He's still bending the rules so that he still wins, quote unquote. But by doing that, has he actually won?
Yeah, Troy, how do you feel about the fact that one of your favorite movies is written by Christopher and Jonathan Mussolini?
But no, this ending, it's like an ending to a Western. Like, Batman has been searching for the idea that good could face evil in the accepted ways. And he basically realizes at the end that even though he's a good man, he must become the man who shot Liberty Valance. He must become a villain, and that the narrative is like printing the legend. And as a kid, I thought that was so dope. And I was like, I don't even think you can make a sequel to this movie. Any attempt to build off this will be lame and underwhelming. And well,
yes, they destroy the myth of Batman to create the myth of Harvey Dent.
Yeah.
And so I kind of see that as trading one noble life for another in a way. And if you have to have one, it would be nice, I guess, to have the one where it's like elected leaders should be in charge of things.
Well, here's my counterpoint to the idea that this destroys the myth of Batman. The whole movie is saying Batman's not working as well as he could because he's become too approachable. Maroni's like, I know you don't kill. The guys with guns are helping him out. Like, Batman has kind of become a known quantity, and he's lost the whole point of Batman, which is to instill fear and operate from the shadows. So if you go from the idea that the myth of Batman is still fundamentally true, which I think Gordon is basically saying in that final monologue, where he's like, Batman actually is who he says he is. He's the only person in the movie who is genuine about who he is and who lives up to the hype. Then him being an outlaw helps him because criminals will think he murders them again. So he's scary again, which is the whole point of how his Batman operation works. So really it was a win-win for everyone.
Well, that's interesting.
Everybody wins.
I think everybody won at the end of The Dark Knight, except Harvey, who's
and Rachel. And
Rachel got her letter burned by Alfred because Alfred is a mini fascist in that he is a British imperialist. So he also has a great lie. She was going to wait for me, Alfred. No, she was not.
So we did it.
So we basically did it. I actually was telling Jake, I didn't think about it until this rewatch, but I'm like, I think this ending is it's fundamentally, to me, I think, unresolved because this is just kind of elemental stuff about hope versus despair.
Yeah.
And there's never going to be a resolution because, like they say, it's faith, right? He says the word faith.
Yeah.
And what it reminded me of, I'm like, oh, right, this is kind of like, they're trying to do in one little scene basically what Children of Men is about also.
Yeah,
where
basically,
it's like,
yeah.
everything sucks.
But there's a little hope.
But maybe there's a way out. You'll never know.
But it's way more cynical here because the hope is based on a lie, essentially.
Well, the entire enterprise of Batman in the entire movie is bending the rules to make sure that everything is better. And the Joker is, if those rules can be bent, then what's the point of the rules?
And then you get into the war on terror in the Bush administration. But I do want to point out, it's interesting viewing this ending in light of what The Dark Knight Rises, which again, according to Nolan, he did not have anything in mind for The Dark Knight Rises when he was working on it. He didn't really start working on it until after The Dark Knight release. So I don't know if you necessarily can say he had the same thing in mind for what this ending meant at the end of The Dark Knight as it does in The Dark Knight Rises. So The Dark Knight Rises basically uses the Great Lie being exposed to destroy Gotham. Like, the Great Lie suspended the writ of habeas corpus in the Dent Act. They basically just threw people in jail without trial.
Which in reality, no one would give a shit. Like, I mean, it's been revealed that a bunch of the stuff that ignited American conflicts was a complete lie and no one gave a shit.
Yeah, but here's the interesting part. So the whole movie has Robin Blake telling Gordon, who's like sick the whole movie, like, why did you lie? You guys were wrong to lie. The lie was bad. And you could go, oh, I guess telling big lies to people about who saved the day just to prop up the myth of Batman and Bruce Wayne is a bad idea. So how does The Dark Knight Rises end? Batman fakes his death, tells everyone he died, gets a statue built to him, and meanwhile, he's living in Italy like he lied again. He did it a second time.
Yeah, but that's like a white lie.
What?
Well, in Dark Knight Rises, the troubling nature of the ending to The Dark Knight is a specter over it. But I think Nolan is more interested in going inward and psychological with Bruce Wayne specifically as a character, which I think is weird when The Dark Knight is mostly...
It's such an ensemble movie.
It's such an ensemble movie, and it's about the entire city of Gotham.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about The Dark Knight Rises, but yeah, it's like if you're thinking about he's taking the movie one at a time, it's like if you're going to pick up it again, then I think I do find it kind of compelling that it's like, well, the lie works, but then this guy, Bane, is able to just kind of roll in, and it's like, well, you don't have Maroni running around, but society is not healed. And it doesn't take much to fuck it up, right?
Excuse me. Is this a Bane podcast?
Because I'm sorry, it's not. We're not here for Bane. He's a poser. He's a pretender to the throne.
It is a relevant point to say that, again, in The Dark Knight Rises, part of why I think there's a massive drop-off is instead of the mob or corrupt cops, all evil in Gotham in The Dark Knight Rises comes from the lower classes that are going to have a revolution. Like, that is just text in the movie.
Okay, so my question is to you guys, did the Joker win?
No, the Joker did not win.
Yes, he did.
The Joker did not win because the myth of Harvey Dent lived on, the myth of Batman lived on, and society did not fall apart. Bane broke all of those things. Bane
okay, we're not talking about Bane, but now...
I'm just telling you what an alpha performance looks like, and it's Bane in The Dark Knight Rises until he gets shot by a Catwoman.
Jan, do you think the Joker won?
Like I said, I think in some ways, Batman proved, like Paul said, Gotham has a sliver of hope. But in other ways, Joker was like, well, I just proved that, the Killing Joke shit of like, if you push someone hard enough, they'll do anything and everything to protect their own shit or even go out for revenge. He didn't win in the sense of like that the fabric of Gotham society collapsed. No. But he maybe has like a moral upper hand. He does. He's the Joker, he's right. That's what I find interesting about this movie is that it's this liberal white milquetoast idiot savant guy, Christopher Nolan, making a movie with superheroes about politics and he's doing it in a very liberal way. Like, there's good police, there's bad police, there's the great men that define our society, whatever. But at the same time, this movie feels a lot of times like an internal dialogue that the Nolans are having with themselves of like, we're scared of society being destroyed, we're scared of dictators, but what if we explore the stuff that we are actually scared of? And that's very much encapsulated with, you know, how people were very lured by the ideology of the Joker, even though it's like a very empty ideology. You know, it's like an empty cup to pour. You know, you could be far left or far right and still the Joker is your guy. You know what I mean?
Hell yeah.
So I find this movie really interesting politically because it does pose like really interesting questions that maybe doesn't fully resolve, but that's the best kind of cinema, in my opinion.
Well, I'll just say, I think it's sort of a draw, but Batman has a slight edge because open doors and all that jazz.
It's a draw also for me.
It's everybody wins.
The whole question of who won is kind of irrelevant because I think the point of the movie is neither can actually win.
It's kind of interesting to think that aspect of Batman and the Joker's rivalry, that they go on forever, that they can't stop, that they need each other. The only reason why that happens is because they couldn't kill off the Joker because he was such a fun character to write in children's stories that they just kept reusing them decade after decade. So it's kind of interesting, this philosophical idea of one needs the other, in many ways, emerges from the practical concerns of writing children's comic books in the 40s, much like how the do not kill rule comes from the practical concerns of writing comic books for children in the 1940s. So again, that's why I always find Batman such an interesting character, is he's designed to be this way for very specific cultural reasons. But as you can see in The Dark Knight, you can play with those things and get this very interesting moral puzzle out of it.
Well, yes, and I mean, as we've brought up before, that's why I take any like lore and continuity discussions with a grain of salt, because it's all about the self-preservation of the DC company, you know?
So Superman is not in this movie because in Superman Returns, he's out in space.
Oh, Christ.
So that's why he missed all of this.
Let's get into final thoughts.
So, this is pretty much like my favorite movie villain of all time. I'm sorry. I was 12 when this came out, so of course it is. The performance is insane. This fucking guy is pretty good. He completely disappears into this role. The Joker is very, very funny. He's very, very scary. But most of all, he exposes the lies and the hypocrisies of the medical system.
Just like Jigsaw.
And yeah, just for that alone, because I fucking hate Obamacare. This is the best Joker of all times. I gave Mark Hamill a 20 out of 10, but this guy's off the fucking radar. He is Sigma, he is Alpha, he is Omega, he is the moment. So I will give him a society out of 10. I would self-immolate for this man. The movie itself, it's good. This is my favorite superhero movie. It's my favorite action movie. It's one of my favorite crime dramas. And I feel like that's the strength of it. I feel like a lot of people, like, I don't know, like, people cream their pants over Logan because they're like, oh my god, it's like The Road or Children of Men, but it's a superhero. That immediately makes it amazing. And I'm like, no, it has to be a great drama first. The Dark Knight is one of the greatest crime dramas of all time. Even if it didn't have Batman. The fact that it's fucking Batman and the Joker is just the cherry on top, you know? The action is incredible. It's some of the most quotable shit ever. I love that it feels like the worst 2 weeks in the life of this city, and by extension in the life of this man, the Batman. You know, so even though it's a very standalone story, it works very well as the low point in Bruce Wayne's story in this trilogy, where he's questioning everything about not only what he's doing and should I be Batman, should I be with the person I love. It's a classic superhero stuff, but this is a movie that at its core is about the S word, society.
Now you're talking.
ASMR.
It's about society, boys. It's about the soul of our culture, right? It's about, is there light? Is our society rotten at its core, or is there hope? And this movie is constantly battling between these two ideas with Batman, with the Joker. I love the philosophical puzzles it poses. I love that it's beyond anything just a fun-ass fucking action movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. Incredible, great. I will also give the movie a society out of 10.
Damn. The Joker is scary. He's funny. He's a twink. He's an idea. He exists to taunt Batman, but he also has a philosophy. He has relatively little screen time in this movie, and every single second is utilized. He hangs over the movie even more so because Two-Face is essentially an extension of him. Heath Ledger here accomplishes what few actors have, which is it's the Daniel Day-Lewis thing of like Heath Ledger in this movie and Heath Ledger in real life. You can't even wrap your head around it's the same guy, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best performances are like that, but it's pretty fun when that happens. So for him and the way that it's used in this movie, it is a 10 out of 10. I think fundamentally this movie, what it does for me is it's one of the very few superhero movies, kind of to Jan's point, like the drama and all that comes first. It engages with its ideas outside of them being genre tropes. What does it mean to take the law into your own hands? What does it mean to be a hero or a symbol or to have hope or sense of duty? How can all these things be perverted and turned around? It's not realistic, but it's actually trying to think about these things that normally you just kind of are supposed to take at face value. It's supposed to be part of your suspension of disbelief because of the way that the genre operates. Not so in this. I think that all the movies make the case for Batman, and then in this movie they are confronting him with the fundamental moral problems for being Batman, which is wild, and it helps that it's all executed pretty damn well. I like Nolan, think he's cool, and not only is he operating at the height of his powers here, but this is one of those alchemy things that I think pretty much all the really, really great movies have, where he's just perfectly matched the material. Batman, but even more so the Joker, that these two and Two-Face are comic book characters that don't just work in this reality that he creates, but there's a unique tension because you can point a camera at a real cityscape and you see the people of Gotham and they're invested with character, and there's so many of them, and you believe it, you're invested in it. And when a freak man with face paint walks in, it's legitimately shocking. And it just, the way it puts it together, it feels like it's really happening, and it feels like the world is watching. All these set pieces have the sense of an audience on the edge of their seat. And even when you're watching it, when I was watching it on my laptop, you feel the attention and you feel the mass of humanity that is swept up in this story. It's a thrill ride that you participate in that's emotional, and it has something on its mind that actually relates to the human condition. And for me, that is what makes it the high watermark for blockbuster filmmaking of all time. And it's a 10 out of 10.
Wow. Paul's first 10.
All right. So Heath Ledger's Joker, he's amazing. He's just the embodiment of chaos. I think he's a little beta, though. The reason why I think he's beta is because he doesn't actually succeed, because his whole goals are a folly, and also Batman bests him in the end. Pretty fucking beta move, because I don't think people are inherently good or evil, and the Joker did nothing to fully confirm that. No, I'm just
Shut the fuck up. You know you're gonna give it a 10 out of 10.
No, I'm just kidding. The Joker here it's kind of amazing. I don't think I've ever seen really any character in my lifetime where there was like this understanding of what the Joker is, like at least in terms of film, where there was this understanding like before The Dark Knight, like everyone thought about Jack Nicholson, and then Heath Ledger comes in and it is so instantly iconic. He's completely gone. There is no trace of A Knight's Tale guy. There is no trace of Brokeback Mountain. It is just this character. Since then, people have tried to outdo or get on the same level of Heath Ledger, which hasn't even really been done yet. He's a complete cartoon character, just a guy in face paint, but he's more mythic than any other filmic portrayal of the Joker before or since. Yeah, he's a society out of 10. He's great. I love him. The movie. Paul pretty much hit everything on the head. Fun visuals and imagination. I got I got nothing. You guys have taken the words out of my mouth. This movie is fucking perfect. This is my favorite, but it's a close competition between this and Mask of the Phantasm.
Okay, it remains supreme. Okay.
It's difficult because I like how Mask of the Phantasm tackles.
Yes, Mask of the Phantasm does. I mean, the thing that gets the most short shrift in Dark Knight is it's not a romance.
Yeah. Well, it's not
There's
a romance
in it, but...
Well, and just how focused it is on Batman as a character. But this is a Joker podcast.
Exactly. As a Joker movie is 20 out of 10.
Yeah, as a Joker movie, it's unparalleled.
I would say The Dark Knight is more like about big ideas, while Mask of the Phantasm is like about the psychology and the personal relationships.
Yeah, and that's the duality of me. That is my two-face, order versus anarchy, good versus evil. Am I more about the big ideas or the intimate small stories? And this is like the biggest you could possibly go. Fucking 10 out of 10 is great.
So the Heath Ledger Joker just really is not a radical reinvention of the Joker to me. Like, this is my thing with the Heath Ledger Joker. Everyone's like, he's talking about philosophy. He's talking about ideas. He has crazy schemes. He's funny, but showman. And to me, this is just normal Joker.
But he looks like Sid Vicious, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He's scary.
Okay, which I thought was a great update. Like, normally I don't like when we lose the suit, but the suit's still there. It's just it's not Cab Calloway anymore. It's more of a different guy.
Homeless Cap Calloway.
That said, if I'm like Heath Ledger's Joker is not a major reinvention of the Joker, it's because I think he's the most comics accurate live action Joker ever. Because he's such a little schemer. He's just a little guy. Like, Jack Nicholson does it too, but Jack Nicholson gets like high on his own supply. I think a lot of live action Jokers run into this where they get high on their own supply. But like, the Heath Ledger Joker is squirrely. He's always just up to something. And that makes him such a good match for Batman. He's not all about himself. Sometimes I feel the other live action Jokers don't even need Batman. This guy needs Batman, which is a core part of his character. And I think the way he attacks society, the way he announces his plans, and the way he's kind of coldly calculating, that is very similar to how the Joker is depicted in Batman #1. And I think even Christopher Nolan has acknowledged that, oh, he accidentally kind of just did the Joker as depicted in Batman #1. So yeah, hands down the best live action Joker. Do I think the Mark Hamill Joker is more effective because he is more of a man than a supernatural force? Yes. And that's why he's still #1. And I'll get more into this in the next part. But that's why this Joker, great Joker. If I'm rating the hair, it's a 7 out of 10. Get a comb, hippie. But everything else, fantastic Joker. I'm fine with the white makeup for this version and the Glasgow smile. I hate that more Jokers try to imitate this Joker, as I wish they would kind of go back to the more classic take on it more often. But this is one of the greatest film villains of all time for a reason. Fantastic guy. 10 out of 10. The movie. So when I first saw this movie, it was my 10th favorite film of all time. I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest live action superhero film of all time. It will never be topped. This is everything you want from a summer blockbuster. It has ideas. It has heart. It has big personalities going after each other. It has every scene's on the edge of your seat. It remembers the people and politics and society. And it's like sociological. It's kind of like how Citizen Kane or Watchmen kind of takes apart society and puts it back together. It's so brilliant. Now, as an older gentleman, I have it as my 36th favorite film of all time. And I think it's the greatest live action superhero comic book film of all time still. So what happened? Well, as a child, I thought Two-Face lived at the end. And so the whole thing kind of held together for me. Now, once I realized he died, it kind of gnawed at me how much the film, like a lot of Christopher Nolan movies, maybe values the flash of philosophical suggestion rather than having the integrity of actually tearing apart what its ideas actually means. And this is how you get something like Christopher Nolan, who is by all accounts a lovely man, who votes left of center, centrist. He makes movies where he uses Occupy Wall Street as Bane's army. And like he accidentally makes these very right-wing movies because he's just susceptible to the world around him. And then, Biden's president and he makes Oppenheimer, where, America winning World War II is a bad thing. I'm just saying things I'm noticing. But I think Nolan is a very imprecise filmmaker So that really hurt the film for me in a lot of ways. And I do admit that I do sometimes prefer the quiet character studies of stuff like Iron Man or Batman Mask of the Phantasm to maybe Sociology 101, where it's maybe some half-baked philosophy coming through that really is just kind of justifying the comic book relationships that were not built to sustain that. However, rewatching it again, and every time I rewatch it, this is like everything you want from a summer blockbuster. Paul pretty much nailed it. You want a movie that makes you think. You want a movie that has characters. Now, as I've gotten older, I've appreciated how all the different angles just are keeping you invested. Now, this is a movie where the ideas are swirling and growing and attacking each other. And that's kind of beautiful in its own way. And while I do wish that maybe the movie was not so explicit about, like, look, Batman, this is a movie that sees Batman as a good idea. So if you're connecting Batman to the rise of Caesar and you don't really counteract that, I don't know what to tell you. You can make a masterpiece, but I have quibbles. Whereas when you take the superhero and make something like Batman Mask of the Phantasm, where it's a metaphor for breakups and interpersonal relationships, it's maybe a little more palatable than using it as a surrogate for political force. Though obviously most people do use it as a surrogate for political force, which is not why we now believe that Batman beats up poor people, when I don't think that was ever really the intention of the comics, because all his villains lived in castles and had doctorate degrees. It changes it into something it can't be. So with that said, this is one of the greatest movies of all time. I love watching it. Yes, this is where the Joker really gets to dig into society, and you really get to see how Batman and Harvey Dent and how all these different elements of society play off each other. And in a time when we're more aware than ever of how stories impact us, of how narratives impact us, of how heroes impact us, and how we can work to affect change in our world, I think The Dark Knight remains a poignant, sad, yet funny, exciting, hell of a thrill ride. 10 out of 10. It's one of the greatest movies of all time. You knew that. You knew that when you were listening to this podcast.
Wait, no, I can't give it a 10 out of 10.
Why?
The Joker doesn't fart.
Oh, no.
9 out of 10.
All right, we'll do a fan edit.
Are you sure he doesn't fart when he, like, walks into the hospital room and Harvey's like, ah! And he's like, sorry.
That's what burned his face.
Yes, it was the fart. All those oil drums were all the Joker's own gas. He had spent months.
So that was
farting.
Nolan's version of the Joker gas, was just him shitting his pants.
I'll give it a 9.9 then, but because there's a promise of a secret fart in there.
Okay, yeah. Speaking of Joker's gas, let's move on to Joker's trick. We've talked about a couple of the Joker's tricks. What was the best one?
The pencil.
Yeah, the pencil. And also convincing my dad that the fat guy was the pig.
That's the greatest trick the Joker ever pulled.
I'll give a shout out to him wearing a tiny COVID mask over his disguise and Harvey Dent not recognizing him until he pulled it down. That's pretty good.
That's second place.
All right, that's it for tonight. This was The Dark Knight. Next week, we're going into...
Wait, we're done, right? We did all the good ones.
You're right about that. We've done all the good ones. Because for the rest of this show, with the exception of a few,
it's going to get a little tougher.
It's going to get a little ropey.
But I don't get it. No one could mess up the Joker.
Actually, I haven't even seen the film we're covering next week.
Me neither, boy.
Which will be a time. We're going back to Toonland, but it ain't a baby tune.
Oh, Mark Hamill Joker?
Yes, Mark Hamill Joker's back.
This will be good, right?
Yeah, and it's based on one of the greatest graphic novels of all time. I'm sure it's going to be great. Goodbye, everyone. All right, I gotta poo, so I'm going to stop recording.
All right.